Chapter 895. Guang, I didn't expect you to end up like this. How is it? It doesn't feel good to be a prisoner, right? That person suddenly spoke. His tone was calm, but there was a lingering sense of pride in it. He seemed to be trying his best to suppress and conceal it, but because he was too proud of himself, he couldn't control it. At this moment, Guang couldn't be bothered to retort. You're a boss character, so at the very least, you should be a little more composed. You're beaming with joy, and I've completely lost control of myself, so it's awkward. I don't want to be like this, but I can't control myself. Mr. Ing, Guang asked tentatively. As he asked, he was thinking in his heart, this guy is not Mr. Ing. This guy is not Mr. Ing. How could I be tricked by this kind of person? This is too embarrassing. That's right. It's me. Mr. Ing answered without hesitation. If not for his hands being tied, Guang really wanted to cover his face. Don't be so direct with your answer. Fine, you win this time. What do you want? Do you think you could be like those ancient emperors after killing me in one win? You can rise up and command the masses to rule the world? Wake up. Please open your eyes and look at what era it is now. What era is it now? Why are you still resorting to such meaningless schemes? I suggest you hurry up and get married, have a son, and then start training him now. When he turns 18, send him to Renmin University or the School of Politics. When he graduates from college, you can escort him all the way to become a civil servant. In about 30 to 40 years, you might be able to fight for the world. If not, you can also look at the history of companies like Apple, Microsoft, Goldman Sachs, ARM, or Samsung. You can try to catch up with the trend and try to earn some capital. Invest more and do business well. In a few years or 10 years, you will own a company worth trillions. Isn't that better than living on the edge of a knife and plotting against humanity? Oh, I heard that Poison Clan and Dark Clan are quite rich in the past. For the Wen family, a few billion isn't a big deal. You shouldn't be any worse off, right? If you really want to experience the feeling of being an emperor, I suggest you choose a small country that is slightly more remote. Even if you buy an island, it's not a big deal. Even if you kill me in 1-1, it's useless. Right now, others still have scruples. If you really provoke them, can you withstand the power of a nuclear bomb? Guang instantly became a chatterbox. It wasn't that he had nothing better to do, but the more he talked, the more he could arouse the other party's interest. The more he spoke, the more information he revealed. It was better than this situation where he knew so much about her, and she did not even know his surname or his name. Shut up. Right, Chun? Mr. Ing suddenly roared and interrupted Guang. All right. Since you don't want to hear it, I won't say it. Guang replied casually. Suddenly, he came back to his senses and felt that something was wrong. What did he call me? Right, Chun? Holy shit. What's going on? Seeing Guang's expression changed, Mr. Ing knew that he guessed right. He suddenly opened his cloak. A middle-aged man's face full of cracks and black fog appeared in the light of the basement. He grinned at Guang. Ha ha ha. Do you think you can fool everyone? You can't believe it, right? I am Mr. Ing. Mr. Ing is me. Now you should know me, right? Guang turned his head and looked at him. After a long while, Guang said, to be honest, I still don't know you. Mr. Ing, who was the middle-aged man, was suddenly stunned. You don't know me? You turned me into a stray dog. You took everything from me, and now you tell me that you don't know me? Guang's mind was filled with hundreds of thousands of questions. Are you famous? Why should I know you? I haven't taken anything from anyone, right? What shocked him the most was that this person actually called him Right Chun. Up until now, he had only officially used the name Right Chun in the Sea of Time and the Second Punishment Realm's Doloa world. Even though his real name was translated into English, this person looked like a Huaxia person. There was no reason for him to use a foreign language. He must know something. That person's emotions gradually went out of control, and he completely fell into a state of rage. At this moment, the earth-paced exploder ability in Guang's body suddenly shook, and his pupils immediately widened. It appeared. That familiar feeling was exactly the same as the one he felt in the morgue the day before yesterday. It was similar to the earth elemental ability of the Broken World Saint clan. It was actually on this person. At this moment, Guang was shocked, but also felt that it was natural. Mr. Ing saw that Chen Guang's expression changed again and thought that he finally remembered something. He sneered and said, "It seems that you were pretending to be crazy just now. I was almost fooled by you. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have failed on the verge of success. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have lost a good situation overnight. Have you always wondered why only the Wen family appeared among the three big aristocratic families, and why the Chu family and Xing family were nowhere to be seen? Let me tell you now. The people from the Chu family and Xing family are already dead souls in my hands. I only needed one painting scroll from the Wen family to gather the three great skills, and I would be able to command the martial world. Give me another 10 years, and I would be able to replace those old fools in Yanjing. If it wasn't for you." Chen Guang ignored him and asked doubtfully, "The Broken World Saint Clan? You still haven't remembered who I am. Can't you just say it? Why do you have to make me guess?" "Old man, Ouyang Tianxing." "Oh." Chen Guang dragged the word out and then stopped abruptly. F***CK. You're that unlucky director of the Special Affairs Bureau. "That's right, it's me. Now do you know why I hate you to the core? If it wasn't for you, how would those old fools in Yanjing dare to fall out with me?" It was useless to know his identity. Chen Guang was more puzzled about how this fellow obtained the ability of the Broken World Saint Clan, and why would he call out his great sorcerer's real name. All right. It's all my fault, all my fault. What now?" Ouyang Tianxing was about to get angry again when he saw Chen Guang's nonchalant expression. However, he suddenly laughed when he saw a trace of mockery in Chen Guang's eyes. "I nearly fell for your trick. You're purposely trying to infuriate me so that I will kill you, right? No wonder Long Ding Tian said that they were afraid that you would starve to death. I thought those two fools were using their authority to torture you. I didn't expect you to be so strong-willed." Chen Guang secretly rolled his eyes and couldn't be bothered to ridicule him. As the saying went, if the upper beam was not straight, the lower beam would be crooked. This nest of evil sects all had one thing in common. They were too good at divergent thinking. Chen Guang casually said, "I didn't expect you to see through me. I'm so angry." Ouyang Tianxing was exasperated. He waved his hand, and a smear of earth element energy appeared out of nowhere. It turned into yellow sand that swept past Chen Guang's eyes and struck the sturdy steel wall of the dungeon. There was a muffled sound, and a fist-sized dent appeared on the 2-centimeter thick steel wall. Chen Guang's eyes widened, and he was ecstatic in his heart. Although he didn't know how this fellow learned the Broken World Saint Clan's ultimate technique, his pure earth element energy was obviously a great supplement for him. The Earth Sauce Exploder's core, which had become extremely weak after coming out of the punishment realm and had been growing extremely slowly, was like a sponge that was thrown into the sea. It was great to eat hot pot in the winter and watermelon in the summer. How could you?" Chen Guang put on an act and pretended to be stunned. At the same time, he was thinking hard about how he could make this fellow indulge in the process of showing off and give him great supplements. Ouyang Tianxing was finally satisfied when he saw that he had subdued him. "Not bad, right, Chen? You didn't expect this, did you? Did you really think the Broken World Saint Clan was destroyed? Did you think no one in this world knew your identity as an outsider? No, you're wrong. Ridiculously wrong. I, Ouyang Tianxing, inherited the undying will of the Broken World Saint Clan. I must kill you. Thanks to you, I was able to obtain the Holy Clan's imprint. It was a blessing in disguise. I'm no longer immortal. I don't just want power. I want to be the ruler of this world. I want eternal life. I will make the Broken World Saint Clan's glory shine on every inch of this universe. I used to think of you as my greatest enemy, but you've disappointed me. Why did your power disappear after coming out of that world? The once arrogant elemental controller, right, Shun, has such a day come for you? After I kill one, I'll kill you. I'll gather the three great techniques and the power of the Broken World Saint Clan. In time, no one or weapon in this world will be able to threaten me, Ouyang Tianxing, the last leader of the Broken World Saint Clan. Ouyang Tianxing laughed proudly. His entire body exploded from where he stood and turned into yellow sand that flew away. Chen Guang was very unwilling. He wanted to reach out and grab a handful of sand. Unfortunately, his hands were tied tightly. His bones had not recovered yet, so he could not break free from the strong hemp rope. Chen Guang was very angry. It was possible that when he was slaughtering the Broken World Saint clan, this fellow was hiding in the punishment realm. He did not know how he was so lucky. After he came out, he did not lose his memory and even obtained the inheritance of the Broken World Saint clan that he had created. Also, he was not one of the targets of his mission. Otherwise, he would have been crushed to death like an ant. I've really seen a ghost. How did you get so into character? The Broken World Saint clan was created by the Heavenly Holy Grail, and so was Right Chun. But what the hell was an elemental controller? The old man was the earth-paste exploder, okay? Fine, I feel like the elemental controller is more imposing. In short, this idiot completely believed what happened in the punishment realm. He did not need to lie to himself. His beliefs were stronger than Xian Qin, Wu Miaowan, and Lu Fei, who had also retained their memories. In the past, this technique of transforming into yellow sand and teleporting through the air was like child's play to him. But now, the core of the exploder was still in its embryonic form. This concubine, oh no, this old man couldn't do it. Forget it. At least he left some earth elemental power when he turned into yellow sand. Let me take another breath to calm down. Less than 20 seconds later, the yellow sand that Ouyang Tianxing had turned into returned. Chen Guang widened his eyes. What was this idiot trying to do? Under his dumbfounded gaze, the yellow sand did not say anything. He leaped to the ground, rolled up his black robe, and ran. Damn it, this idiot forgot to take his clothes. Chen Guang looked at the lonely red briefs on the ground and shouted, I say, Ouyang Tianxing, your underwear is still on the ground. The yellow sand returned for the second time. He rolled up his underwear and ran. Although Chen Guang could not see his expression, he could imagine how embarrassed he was. Forget it. Anyway, it was not bad to take a few more breaths. It felt like his bones were recovering faster. Chapter 896. Although Ouyang Tianxing was so confident that he was about to explode on the spot, it was clear that his abilities were not as terrifying as imagined. Chen Guang could also see that although he could transform his body into yellow sand, the disparity between him and the 3 sacred race elders he had dealt with in the punishment realm couldn't be calculated. After he came out, he only retained a little bit of the strength of the bean-paste explosion. It was already ridiculous that this fellow was stronger than him. There had to be a limit. Otherwise, he would not be so afraid of Wenwen now. It seemed like the mutation that happened to Wenwen had caused her cultivation to improve. If not for his existence, Wenwen would probably be the strongest inner force martial artist in history. Just like what Azure had said, although the inner force of humans could not break through the limits of the plane, it was still a rather exquisite cultivation technique. Ouyang Tianxing was a martial artist and was already very strong. He also obtained the ability of the world-shattering holy tribe. He was not stupid and should understand the logic behind it. Although he did not know what techniques the other 2 unlucky families, the Chu and Xing families, had, it should not be worse than the painting scroll. The 3 great techniques and the ability of the world-shattering holy tribe were quite powerful. Chen Guang knew why he purposely came to show off in front of him. Since he really believed that the world-shattering holy tribe really existed, he also thought that he was the great Magister Raichun of the Dolua world. He had also seen him in his prime as the earth-paste explosion in the Dolua world. He must be afraid that he was pretending to be weak and that he was still the invincible great Magister. Hence, he came to see the situation. Perhaps he had prepared 2 plans. One of them was to confirm whether he had lost all his abilities. If he was sure, he would continue to use him as bait and carry out his plan to kill Wenwen. His other plan was probably to confirm that he was pretending to be weak and that he still had his abilities. Then, he would immediately kowtow and beg him to give him a chance and spare his life. Really, once I turn on my old and sophisticated mode, thinking about these problems is too obvious. It's no fun at all. Lying on a metal bed, Chen Guang's stomach was bloated as he sensed the injuries on his bones swiftly recovering. At the same time, he was bored to death. At this point, it was useless for him to be anxious, and he could only wait for Liuli's master plan. Speaking of which, the old men in Yanjin were quite a failure. They picked someone from all over the place to set up the Special Affairs Bureau. Not only did they fail to achieve their goal of restraining inter-force martial artists, but they also created a mentally retarded villain with malicious intentions. To be honest, if he hadn't gotten himself involved, he might have been able to do what he had said just now bit by bit. With his thorough preparation and astonishing strength, he might really be able to take advantage of the old master's trust in him to slowly replace the crown prince with a leopard cat, slowly replacing the people who held the scepter's authority with his own people. He should not have made the mistake of attacking the old man's family. In the past, Chen Guang had never understood why. At that time, he was just a commoner, unable to reach the heavens or land. There was nothing worth noticing about him. Later, he understood that it was because of Wenwen, but he couldn't blame her. The two of them met by chance, and they became best friends without any conflict of interest. Neither of them hoped to get anything from the other. It was just because the tortoise liked the mung bean, and they found each other pleasing to the eye. The purer the relationship, the longer it lasted. The two of them were able to get along with each other from the time they met in their first year of university. It was a pity that their simple friendship at that time was still targeted by others. Ouyang Tianxing did not do much to Chen Guang's family, and there were no irreparable casualties. To him, he might have just casually arranged for two people to cause a small case of food poisoning in Chen Guang's hot pot restaurant. But from then on, Chen Guang's life changed. The wealthy Chen family had to take on responsibilities that they shouldn't have because of the Special Affairs Bureau's interference. Perhaps Ouyang Tianxing had already seen through Chen Guang's character when he made his move. He knew that Chen Guang was someone who would suffer for his pride. He also knew that Wenwen would be troubled by Chen Guang's matter, but she would not help him directly because of her pride. After that, Wenwen might have spent most of her energy on helping Chen Guang find out more about the hot pot poisoning incident. Perhaps Ouyang Tianxing had spent a lot of energy to deal with the Chu family and the Xing family of the three aristocratic families, plotting and completing his plans bit by bit. His attack on the Chun family's hot pot restaurant in Lalai County might have been one of his many schemes to divert the attention of the powerful Wen family. To Ouyang Tianxing, such an insignificant scheme was worse than choking on a mouthful of soup. But just like how one day in heaven was 1 year on earth, when a deity knocked over a wine cup, there would be heavy rain and floods for 3 years in the mortal world. Ouyang Tianxing's casual action had completely destroyed the Chun family and Chen Guang's life. Chen Guang used a whole year to recover his family, and that was with the help of the heavenly Holy Grail. If he was just an ordinary person, without Lu Li's help, if he lived stubbornly and refused to accept help from others, perhaps he would have to wait for many years. Perhaps he would have to wait for many more years. Lin Jingwei really couldn't bear to see him in such dire straits. The Wen family might be like the other two aristocratic families, quietly falling into Ouyang Tianxing's hands. At that time, Chen Guang and his family could be reborn. Perhaps his mother would have passed away because she could not afford to treat her illness by then. A few million was a small matter to the upper class, where money made money. But to ordinary people, it was a goal that could only be achieved after a lifetime of hard work. When Chen Guang thought of that kind of life, he felt a chill down his spine. So how could he not hate? What he hated more was Ouyang Tianxing's cruelty and cold-bloodedness. At that time, he did not want to completely anger Wenwen, so his family was only touched lightly by him. But later, when he felt that it was necessary, he slaughtered 25 families without hesitation. But now, Ouyang Tianxing might be regretting it. Chen Guang knew that he must have become a special existence in Ouyang Tianxing's heart. Perhaps he was even more special than Wenwen. After all, I'm a great sorcerer, right, Chen, from another world. Sai, once this human spirit mode is activated, there's really no stopping. Luli, hurry up. I'm getting a little impatient. In the camp by Ninghai Lake, after most people left voluntarily or unwillingly, only less than 20 people, including Xian Qin and Wu Miaowan, stayed. The two little girls sat in front of the grave that had just been covered with soil. They looked at each other speechlessly, their eyes red and their throats choked. The two of them did not expect that their teacher, who was almost omnipotent in their hearts, would leave just like that. The two of them lost their parents when they were young and grew up with their teacher. Their relationship was like that of a teacher or a mother. With Abbas Yuan and Wu Qingming's original age and skills, they would not live to 100 years old, but at least have a few decades to live. But suddenly, the sky above Qin and Wu Miaowan's heads collapsed. The two of them had done a good job to be able to endure the pain and resolutely lead the team to stay. Taoist Vascalo sat beside the two of them and said, "Deputy Bureau Chiefs, you don't have to be too sad. For us martial artists, although we don't roam the Jianghu all year round like in the past, freely repaying gratitude and avenging enmity, but in fact, we still have to put our heads on our waists, licking the blood of our swords. It can't be said that our days are precarious, but if we often walk by the river, it's inevitable that our shoes will get wet. Although sect leader Xian and sect leader Wu are women, they are quite heroic and have the demeanor of a woman. In the end, they did not ruin their reputation as Jianghu women." Old Man Panda also sat down. "Vascalo and Oxnose are right. I still remember many years ago when your teacher was about the same age as you are now. Coincidentally, the country had just been established, and the major sects in Jianghu were fighting for power and profit. At that time, although the master of the two bureau chiefs came from a small family, he was upright in his conduct, upheld justice, and was not afraid of the strong. He punished some evildoers who disregarded human life and left a good name in Jianghu. He even killed his way from a bone strength master to a skin strength master. At that time, I also met sect leader Xian and sect leader Wu a few times. In the blink of an eye, dozens of years have passed. Time really flies. Speaking of which, the two of you only left 2 years earlier than me and Oxnose." Taoist Vasp Kalo glared at Panda. "Your panda face is Oxnose. Your whole family is Oxnose. But don't worry, Deputy Bureau Chiefs. Since Master Pan and I have decided to stay, we have made up our minds. If it really gets to the point of no return, the two of us will find a way to save your lives. Thousand Despair Sect and Thousand Flowers Valley are different. Large sects like us can't afford to suffer anymore." Xian and Wu Miaowan understood, but they did not know what to say. Just as the two seniors had said, with the death of their teacher, as the eldest disciple of the sect, the burden of taking care of the hundreds of people in the huge sect fell on their shoulders. Their teacher had planned and worked hard when he was alive, and there was only one goal: to strengthen the sect. Now that the two of them were in danger, if they died here, they would be considered disloyal, unfilial, and unjust. But when the two of them thought of Cheng Guang, who had been kidnapped, they became even more worried. Although he was invincible in the soul world, his magic could only conjure up a sesame-sized ball. Although he was a genius in cultivating inner force, no matter how talented he was, he needed time to grow. He was only at the beginner level of muscle force. If he fell into the hands of those people, wouldn't he be at their mercy? This was really worrying until his hair turned white. At this moment, a cold voice came from behind them. "This is the tomb of sect leader Xian of Thousand Despair Sect and sect leader Wu of Thousand Flowers Valley, right?" Everyone turned around and saw a lady in white standing proudly in front of them. She was looking at them with a calm gaze. Strangely, although she was standing there without moving, everyone present, including experts like Taoist Vascalo, felt that her figure seemed to be moving left and right, and they could not see her clearly. Apart from that, the autumn wind that was blowing nonstop by the lake seemed to freeze when it reached her. Her clothes were hanging straight down, and it was as if time had stopped around her. She was not dressed like a fairy, and the long, pitch-black saber hanging on her back, which was almost as tall as she was, showed that she was not a soft-hearted person. But at this moment, everyone in front of the tombstone could not help but feel that this lady did not belong to this world. She was like a fairy. Woman was here. She had become so strong. Chapter 897. Woman tried hard to make her expression look softer. However, The anxiety and anger in her heart made this usually simple task extremely difficult. But when she saw the two new graves and the two red-eyed girls in front of the tombstones, the unhappiness in her heart finally dissipated a little, but not much. She had originally planned to scold them harshly. Why did they accompany Chen Guang in his madness? Why did they come here? Why did they allow Chen Guang to be kidnapped under the eyes of so many people? She really wanted to scold these people for being trash and idiots. But now she couldn't scold them. In fact, she was very clear that if she really had to find someone to scold, it would definitely be that guy, Chen Guang. I've already said it before. Since everything started with me, and I have the ability to do so, of course I should be the one to end everything with my own hands, and I'll include you as well. I know the anger in your heart, and I also understand your feelings of wanting to do something, but this is not necessary. Now it's great. You overestimated yourself and came here, and then you were captured alive. What should I do? Clearly, with my strength, it was something that could be easily done, but suddenly the difficulty has increased infinitely. Perhaps if I only rely on my own strength to find their headquarters, it will not be done in a day or two, and perhaps I can no longer obtain the antidote before my father dies of the poison, but it is still better than being held hostage by the other party. Can I not care about your life and death? No. But if the other party uses your life to threaten me, forcing me to either cripple my own martial arts or watch you die, what should I do? With things turning out like this, Wenwen couldn't help but be angry. But in the end, things had come to this, and what was done could not be undone. Wenwen knew that blaming anyone would not change the truth, not to mention that the two Jianghu seniors had paid the price with their lives. She could not continue to pour salt on the hearts of the two poor girls that were riddled with holes. Nor could she blame the Jianghu seniors who sacrificed their lives to protect Chen Guang. Wenwen suddenly moved. The others did not see how she moved, but she suddenly appeared in front of the grave, as if the ground had shrunk to an inch. She quickly bowed and said in a clear voice, "Junior Wenwen represents Chen Guang to bow to the two seniors." The strange thing was she was obviously talking to the tombstone, but Taoist Song Song and Xian Qin felt she was talking to them. In Jianghu, it was hard to find a one-zone realm martial artist in 100 years. For example, Taoist Vast Kalo's plain cloth sect. In these few hundred years, there were only 3 pure heart realm strong practitioners who surpassed the skin strength. No one present could understand Wenwen's realm. She seemed to be talking casually, but her voice had an inexplicable sense of insight into people's hearts. Taoist Vasp Kalo opened his mouth wide, unable to close it for a long time. He could not hide his shock. At the individual military drill, he had seen Wenwen brandishing the butcher's knife against the killers of Poison Sect and Dark Sect. At that time, he was already shocked by her extremely powerful skills. He did not expect that in such a short period of time, she actually improved a few steps. Some people were right. This demoness was indeed a demoness. How did she train? This was completely unreasonable. According to the sect's ancient records, plain cloth sect's almost invincible founder may not be her opponent, but the person with the most complicated feelings right now was still Xian Qin. She used to be secretly jealous of Chen Guang's special care for Wenwen, even subconsciously compared her in secret, and sometimes said some strange things. However, it was rare for her to be so close to this peerless genius who was known as the once-in-100-years genius in Jianghu. She could feel the aura of a powerful expert that she seemed to have returned to her natural state, but was actually constantly exuding. Even the inner strength in her dantian was affected by her and began to circulate on its own at a much faster speed than usual. Xian Qin really did not want to admit it, but she could not help but feel a little ashamed of her own inferiority. Just like Chen Guang, the great sorcerer who could destroy the world in his previous life, and the invincible genius who sat on the sacred body of elements in this life. These two were a match made in heaven, so perfect that it made people jealous. No wonder he was always thinking about Wenwen. If I was a man, I would also be unable to extricate myself from falling in love with such a strange woman. Right? Sister Xian Qin, don't worry too much. I will save that guy. She seemed to be talking. Was she talking to me? Sweetheart, Sect leader, one is talking to you. Wu Miaowan, who was beside her, calmed down faster and poked Xianqin's waist. Xianqin suddenly came back to her senses. Oh, all right, all right. Wenwen forced a smile. This guy is a little troublesome, but as long as I don't die, he won't have to worry about his life. I don't know where the people from Six Swords sect got the courage to mix with the evil sects, but it doesn't matter. Demon Sovereign Geo and evil monarch, you are full of tricks. They think that they have set up a dragon's pool and tiger's den for me, but I will let them understand that in the face of absolute power, all tricks are futile. Taoist Vasp Kalo and Panda said in unison. That's right. Sect leader when's martial arts are unparalleled, unprecedented. When one continued, Sigh, it's also Chung Guang, that idiot, who only knows how to be hot-headed and cause trouble for me. Otherwise, this matter wouldn't have been so troublesome. You can't blame it all on Chung Guang, it's all my fault. If I had discovered that Long Ding Tian was up to no good, Chief Chen wouldn't have fallen for it. Unexpectedly, Xianqin interrupted Wenwen's words. Wenwen turned around and looked at her with a complicated smile on her face. Xianqin was looking at Wenwen, and Wenwen was also looking at Xianqin. Wenwen already knew about the existence of Xianqin and Wu Miaowan. When she had nothing better to do, she was also interested in the things that happened around Chung Guang. She already knew that Chung Guang had 2 dedicated deputy chiefs by his side. Perhaps it was because she loved the house and its crow, but people who didn't understand Chung Guang didn't think that there was anything good about him. But after getting close to him, Wenwen knew that he had an inexplicable and irresistible lethality towards girls. After coming here, she took a few more looks and purposely probed. Xianqin, this little girl, had indeed subconsciously started to protect Chung Guang. When she called her little sister, she agreed without any qualms. There was indeed a reason behind it. Being stared at by Wenwen, Xianqin's face turned red. She didn't know what she was embarrassed about. She called me little sister. Maybe she found out something? So I forget it. In any case, Chung Guang was quite a playboy. On the other side, Wenwen confirmed her suspicions, but didn't ask further. Instead, she changed the topic. Everyone, I'll make it short. If Chung Guang wasn't captured, this matter might be simpler. The people from Poison Sect and Dark Sect invited me to a duel at the top of a mountain about 70 miles west of here. On the way here, just now, I saw more than 10 experts at the peak of Skin Force. They are all highly respected and skilled seniors in Jianghu. I'm thinking that since the situation has changed, I might need everyone's help. Taoist Vas Kalo didn't put on the airs of a senior expert in front of Wenwen. He lowered his head and bowed. Since this humble Taoist has stayed here to save Chief Chun, since sect leader one has invited me, this humble Taoist is duty-bound. Panda also said in a clear voice, Of course. Wenwen nodded in satisfaction. Chung Guang's subordinates in Guangding General Headquarters were really loyal. However, it could also be that these seniors in Jianghu could see the situation clearly. They knew that technology was advancing day by day, and that martial arts alone could no longer dominate the world. Especially after China's military held individual military exercises, the people in Jianghu who were there were all shocked by the highly advanced individual weapons. This was the trend of history that couldn't be stopped or defied. One also didn't understand why the 2 evil sects, Six Swords Sect and Long Ding Tian, had the guts to go against the trend of history in such a situation. She vaguely knew that there was an expert behind this, but she didn't know who it was. One also didn't think that the so-called expert could pose any threat to her. When Xianqin and Wu Miaowan saw this, although they felt that something was wrong, they still became spirited. Xianqin said in a clear voice, I'll go too. Wu Miaowan ran back into the tent and carried her medicine box. Seniors, although my skills aren't good, my medical skills have been passed down by my master. Perhaps I can help everyone. Unexpectedly, Wenwen suddenly withdrew the smile on her face and said in a slightly cold tone, The 2 of you have a good idea, but I think we should forget about this matter. Xianqin didn't understand. Why? Wu Miaowan clenched the strap of her medicine box. She also didn't understand. Everything was fine just now. Why did sect leader Wen suddenly change her attitude? All the seniors here are experts in skin strength. The two of you are only in bone strength. How can you be of any help? When it comes to a life and death battle, the evil sects have the advantage in numbers. Do you think we'll have to split people to cover you? According to my original plan, I should go alone. Now that I have no choice, I need the help of all the seniors. As for the two of you, scram as far as you can. Don't be a burden. Unlike the others who maintained respect for Enchanting and Wu Miaowan, the two deputy directors, Wenwen had the confidence to speak as the world's #1 expert. When Taoist Song Song and the others saw this, they thought that this was a woman's world and it wasn't appropriate to interrupt. About 10 minutes later, everyone was ready to set off. Wenwen walked at the front with the black saber on her back. Behind her were dozens of experts from various sections. Enchanting and Wu Miaowan pursed their lips and followed behind the crowd unwillingly. After walking for a few miles, Wenwen finally couldn't take it anymore. She turned around and stepped on the void, landing in front of Enchanting and Wu Miaowan as if she was flying. With a clang, she unsheathed the black saber and slashed it on the ground. Dust flew everywhere. A 10 feet long and a meter-deep ravine appeared in front of Enchanting and Wu Miaowan. Both of you, I'll say this first. This ravine is the boundary. If the two of you dare to cross it again, don't blame me for being impolite. Enchanting panicked. How can you do this? Wu Miaowan also bit her lip hard. Too much, too much. Wenwen sheathed her saber. Without another word, she turned around and left. That, sect leader one, there's something I don't know if it's appropriate to say. Taoist Song Song couldn't stand it anymore. He waited until they were far away before he cautiously spoke. Wenwen, however, kept her sharp edge and cupped her hands at Taoist Song Song. Senior Song Song, I didn't mean to make things difficult for the two of them. Their master is already dead, and they really can't afford to suffer anymore. This time, the other party has hostages. I actually don't have the confidence to win. I'm not afraid to say it out loud. I'm also prepared to die. Wenwen didn't say it clearly. If her death could really be exchanged for Chen Guang and her father's antidote, she could accept it. Chapter 898. At this moment, Chen Guang, who was taken as a hostage, was still lying on the iron bed in the dungeon. However, the injuries on his bones had already healed, and he was just lying there on purpose. The iron door of the dungeon creaked open, and a delicate-looking young man appeared in the dungeon. He was holding a recording pen in his hand, and there were two people standing behind him. Chen Guang recognized these two people. One of them was the deputy leader of Dark Clan, Ghost Shadow, who had forced Exine Yuan and Wu Qingming to their deaths. The other person seemed to be called Ju He. Chen Guang's heart skipped a beat when he saw this scene. Wenwen is here. They want me to say something to make Wenwen submit. Jiu Li, let him read the script. Ghost Shadow said with his unique hoarse voice, laughing strangely. That delicate-looking young man pulled his collar and came forward excitedly. He first played the recording pen beside Chen Guang's head, then took out a piece of paper and waved it in front of Chen Guang. Read it. Chen Guang looked up and rolled his eyes. This script was worth 800 yuan a month? To my dearest Wenwen, a day without seeing you feels like 3 years. I'm now a guest in the mountains, and I've been eating and drinking well. I miss you very much, and I wonder if you've gotten thinner or fatter. What the heck is this? The seniors of Poison Clan and Dark Clan are kind people, and I also approve of their entrepreneurial ideas. Entrepreneurial ideas. Damn it. Can you be more professional? Anyway, I really don't want to die. Save me. Your change of topic is too stiff. Just a second ago, you were eating and drinking well, and the next second, you don't want to die. Chen Guang turned his head silently. Brother, you were taught Chinese by a PE teacher in primary school, right? What the hell are you writing? All right, I know what you want me to record. Isn't it just to scream for help, so that one can't fight back and can only obediently stretch out her neck to be killed? Dream on. Get lost. With that, Chen Guang turned his face away, too lazy to pay any more attention to this idiot. Unexpectedly, this person called Jiu Li was not angry after being scolded. Instead, she put away the recording pen with a smile. Is that okay? Juhi asked from the side. Julie nodded. It's almost done. I've already recorded Cheng Guang's voice. I'll go back and synthesize it. It should be enough to pass off as genuine. Cheng Guang's eyes widened as he suddenly realized that he had been tricked. Julie was very proud. Chief Chun, you didn't expect this, right? Ever since I was young, I've liked doing these things. Currently, apart from practicing martial arts, I'm just hanging around on Bilibili. I'm sorry, I'm one of the uploaders of Bilibili's Wong Sidu rap. At that moment, Cheng Guang was dumbfounded. What the F*** CK? Miscalculation. Who would have thought that there would be a weirdo like Bilibili's uploader among the evil martial artists? When they left triumphantly, Cheng Guang immediately became anxious. Although he didn't know how this guy planned to synthesize his voice, seeing how confident he was, he definitely had something up his sleeve. Cheng Guang had seen a lot of Wang Situ's ghostly works on Bilibili, so he knew how powerful they were. Lord Lu Li, I still need to save you. Hurry and save me. Shut up. It'll be tomorrow morning at the soonest. Good luck. Unexpectedly, Liu Li actually replied this time, and her voice revealed a trace of exhaustion. Can't it be faster? A man who was never content was like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. He might have been able to remain calm when he knew nothing, but now that he knew the exact time, he naturally wanted more. This was the experience that Cheng Guang had come to after dealing with Lu Li for so long. Lord Lu Li's potential was like a chasm. There would always be a gap. Do you want to experience the incomplete beauty of the incomplete version of a world in a cup that can't be resurrected? If you're not careful, you'll also lose your own beauty. That's right, tonight's night is so beautiful that I'll forget to go home. Sorry, it's daytime outside. Oh, up until now, Cheng Guang couldn't be bothered to count how many times he had died in the world in a cup. In the past, he had died N times just to learn a foreign language, and he had exploded countless times just to learn acting, not to mention that he was learning inner force for close quarters combat this time. If he went in without the ability to resurrect himself, wouldn't that be tantamount to throwing his life away? Although he had always been good at causing trouble, courting death didn't mean that he was going to die. Courting death was good, but he couldn't be greedy and had to be measured. On the other side, although Wenwen had forced Enchanting and Wu Miaowan away, the two deputy directors were not easy to deal with. They followed far behind, sneaking around like thieves. This woman is so annoying. She thinks she can climb all over us sisters just because she's so capable. Oomph. So infuriating. Wu Miaowan grumbled angrily as she glared at the figure in the distance in front of her. Seeing that Enchanting ignored her, she slammed her palm on the tree next to her. Too much, too much. Enchanting saw that Wu Miaowan was not done and said helplessly, she's just trying to save people. Our skills are indeed far from theirs. I understand that, but I just don't feel comfortable. Can't we just talk nicely? Enchanting didn't speak up for Wenwen anymore. It was obvious that she thought the same way. Wenwen didn't turn around, but she was well aware of the two little tails behind her. Sigh, Senior Vasp Kalo, why don't we trouble you to invite those two to come along with us? Taoist Master Vasp Kalo felt relieved and quickly turned around to ask for help. When everyone gathered again, Wenwen took the initiative to explain, I'm sorry, the two of you. I originally thought that this trip would be extremely dangerous. Apart from me, the other seniors are all at skin force and above. If we were to be defeated and run, they would have a higher chance of escaping. The two of you, on the other hand, would almost certainly die. What I did earlier was to make the two of you back off. However, since the two of you are so determined, I won't force you to be a good person. Instead of letting the two of you follow behind, why don't you come with us? It'll be safer. Although her explanation was very stiff, Enchanting and Wu Miaowan felt much better when they heard it. Sect Leader 1. Cheng Guang's matter is both our matter and yours. Moreover, we have a blood feud with our sect. We can't just stand by and watch. Wu Miaowan nodded. That's right. Sect Leader 1, don't worry. The two of us promise not to drag you down. Wenwen reluctantly agreed. She raised her head to look at the gradually setting sun and estimated the time in her mind. If they rushed like this, They would probably arrive at the appointed location the next morning. If she followed her previous plan, it would be impossible for her to accept the other party's challenge. The other party was extremely crafty and cunning. Only the heavens knew what kind of trap they would lay in advance. Originally, the enemy was in the dark while she was in the dark. She was alone. If she didn't consider the fact that her father's poison was acting up, she should have had the advantage. But now, the other party had laid out an inescapable net. She knew it was a trap, but she had no choice but to fall into it. No one knew what was waiting for her on the other side. Woman couldn't think of a way to save him if the other party used Chun Guang's life as a hostage. She didn't have the slightest bit of confidence. There was an indescribable bitterness in her heart. At this moment, a bullet whizzed over from the horizon. It didn't land on anyone, but hit right under Wenwen's feet. The others jumped in fright and instinctively jumped back. Wenwen looked down and heard Chun Guang's voice coming from the bullet. "Help! Help me! They want to kill me. I don't want to die. Help!" Chun Guang's mournful scream resounded in the valley. It made people sad and shed tears. Everyone looked at each other. Although we know that Chief Chun is a hostage right now, isn't your scream a little too miserable? Boss, you're so spineless. How can we bear it? No, this can't be what he said. Wenwen and enchanting said in unison. The two women looked at each other. Wenwen smiled knowingly, while enchanting turned her face away guiltily. Obviously, the two of them knew Chun Guang's character very well. Although he was usually not a proper person, he was more principled than the average person when it came to this kind of big right and wrong. Even if he really wanted to ask for help and beg for mercy, it wouldn't be in such a tone of fear. Instead, it would be with some playfulness. That guy was a coquettish B*TCH who had no moral integrity and vulgarity carved into his bones. He would never really say something like that. This recording must have been faked, but it was useless to realize this. Chun Guang was still a hostage in the hands of the other party. Time flew. Chun Guang was lying on the iron bed. It was not convenient for him to move, and he had nothing to do. To him, this kind of confinement was the greatest torture. Perhaps it was even worse than the soldiers in the army who were punished. At least those people could still move a little. Fortunately, he had dealt with the world in cup more than once or twice. Although he was in a state of mental blockade in the world in cup, he had eaten a lot of pork and gradually learned to snort like a pig. He didn't fall into a state of frenzy like the other people who were locked up. Instead, he simply closed his eyes and fell into a deep sleep. In a daze, Chun Guang felt that the iron bed under him was swaying, as if someone was moving it. Chun Guang slowly opened his eyes and gradually regained consciousness. The morning breeze blew on his face and the ankles under his trousers. It was chilly. His entire body was being moved up and down by the iron bed. It was like a young lady sitting in a bridal sedan. The difference was that a young lady was sitting in a bridal sedan waiting to be married, but Chun Guang was lying on the iron bed like a stretcher, waiting to be taken as a hostage. Chun Guang looked into the distance. The sun was like a mischievous child poking its head out to look at him. The sky was about to brighten. "Yo, Bureau Chief Chun is awake? Did you have a good sleep?" Long Ding Tian was walking beside Chun Guang with his arms crossed. He had a face full of ridicule. "Where are we going?" Chun Guang asked despite knowing the answer. "We are going to your and Sec Master Wen's burial ground." Long Ding Tian's tone was full of confidence and pride. Chun Guang didn't bother about him and continued to look at the other people. There were about 70 people. Among them were Demon Sovereign Jiao and Evil Monarch Yu, who he had seen before. There were also people like Zhuge Ling from the Six Swords sect. There were also some people that Chun Guang didn't have any impression of. That Mr. Ing had turned out in full force. Over 70 Pai Gene experts. Perhaps only the two young men who were carrying the iron bed weren't Pai Gene experts. He didn't see that Mr. Ing, and he didn't know where he was. Chapter 899. How is it? Is our Shadow Alliance's strength worthy of Chief Chen's discerning eyes? Long Ding Tian sized up Chun Guang's expression. When he saw that Chun Guang was stunned, he asked with interest, "It's all right. It's good that everyone is here." Chun Guang used a calm tone to reply indifferently, but he was counting the time in his heart. Lord Luli, it's already morning. Damn it, I'm panicking now. When everyone arrived, the sun had yet to rise halfway. The pitiful old Master Guang was also thrown miserably to the side of the cliff like a piece of wind-blown, cured meat. Then he saw the 70-odd people actually move in a flash. In the blink of an eye, they burrowed into the holes that had been dug at some point in time. Immediately after, dozens of pitch-black gun muzzles silently emerged from the cliff. Chun Guang was astonished. He had seen shameless people, but he had never seen such shameless people. All of you are reputable experts in the pugilistic world, but you're actually hiding in a hole and shooting. This isn't appropriate, right? Pharmacy Bailian. As expected of the former chief, Ouyang Tianxing, he never took the normal path. Forget it, they should be thankful that they didn't bring out a bigger weapon. If it was just these guns, they shouldn't be able to take Wenwen's life. Chun Guang, say it. When sect mistress arrives, I will place my hand on your neck and request her to cripple her own martial arts. Furthermore, I will swear to the heavens that as long as she complies with my request, I will not only hand over her father's antidote, but I will also immediately release you. What choice do you think she will make? Just as Chun Guang was cursing in his heart, Ouyang Tianxing's voice appeared beside him again. He was different from the last time they met. This time, he had wrapped himself up tightly. He probably didn't want anyone to see his monster-like face. Of course she won't agree. Don't treat her as a fool. If a despicable person like you doesn't go back on your words, it would be a waste of all the melodramatic dramas that I brought her to watch. You said I'm a despicable person? How much better are you? If it weren't for me, or if I were to disappear without a trace, you'd be the same as me in less than 10 years after you've stabilized your position in the General Bureau of Broken Light Order. Of course not. My life pursuit is much more meaningful than yours. Chun Guang didn't finish his sentence. You're just a pitiful person who lives in my fantasy. Really? Ouyang Tianxing smiled nonchalantly. One could see him shrugging through the cloak. Forget it. I won't provoke you anymore. It's meaningless. You can rest assured that I will give Wenwen a fair chance to fight me. I almost believed it. No, I'm serious. At least before yesterday, I still had some fear in my heart. But haven't you noticed that compared to yesterday, heaven and earth are a little different? Ouyang Tianxing turned around. His deep gaze seemed to pierce through the cloak and peer into Chun Guang's heart. With that reminder, Chun Guang frowned and turned to look at the sky. At the same time, he secretly activated his earth explosion ability. After a while, Chun Guang became more and more surprised. Ouyang Tianxing was right. The power of the Holy Grail, which was everywhere between heaven and earth, became even thicker. When the punishment realm first appeared, Chun Guang sensed that the entire world, and even the entire universe, was enveloped by the power of the Holy Grail. It turned the real world into the world in the Holy Grail. But after he completed the mission, the power of the Holy Grail retreated. He heard Azure say that after the real world and the Holy Grail, which was later known as the real world, completely merged, the two worlds had an inseparable connection. The power of the Holy Grail could no longer be completely separated. It was just so thin that he, the owner of the Holy Grail, could not sense it. After that, the punishment realm appeared for the second time. The real world and the real world merged completely. The entire Earth, and even the entire universe, was completely merged and changed. Lu Fei's father, who was not in Utopia, had his memory tampered with easily. A mirror image of Utopia was created, and the people in Utopia were pulled into the punishment realm in the Holy Grail. After the second punishment realm was completed, although the real world was restored, Chun Guang had a vague feeling that something was wrong. Today, he finally understood. The two consecutive punishment realms allowed the real world to merge with the real world twice. The degree of merging was deeper each time, and the connection between the two became closer. Especially after the second time, even though the power of the Holy Grail was still receding like the tide, it was like ants had dug out a hole in a dam. There was still the power of the Holy Grail leaking out from the real world. Now, The concentration of the power of the Holy Grail had finally crossed a certain threshold. It went from undetectable to detectable. Perhaps it was just a seemingly negligible difference between 10 to the minus 10 power and 10 to the minus 9 power, but it was fundamentally different. This meant that the power of the Holy Grail had exceeded the minimum detection limit. It was just like when humans detected something. If the instrument could not detect it, they would treat it as if it did not exist. When the instrument could detect it, the quantitative change would trigger a qualitative change, and it would become something from nothing. In fact, this change was happening every day. It was just that he did not notice it before. Of course, Ouyang Tianxing could not detect the power of the Holy Grail. However, just like when he was near Utopia, the more concentrated the power of the Holy Grail, the more concentrated the elemental power around Utopia. The change that Ouyang Tianxing sensed was definitely elemental power. Although the current concentration could not be compared to before, it was enough for Ouyang Tianxing, who also had a superpower and claimed to be the successor of the World Shatterer Holy Lord, to recover his superpower to a large extent. Right, Chun? Now you should believe that I will fight Wenwen head-on, right? Although I don't know what happened, the Doluo world and our world seem to be connected. The elemental power is constantly surging over. I'm afraid that it won't be long before the elemental power in both worlds becomes the same. When that time comes, the mark that the Holy Clan left in my body will allow me to quickly recover to the strength of a top-tier warrior. As for now, it's time for me to use fact to tell everyone that I, Ouyang Tianxing, am not just a wise man who only knows how to scheme. I have unprecedented strength. The scene of me defeating Wenwen today will be recorded, and I will let everyone in the pugilistic world see it. I will also send a copy to those old fools in Beijing and have them wash their necks and wait. I will let them know that I, Ouyang Tianxing, am back. Of course, it's better to be safe than sorry. With you around, I am sure that I will win. Qingguang, you are my trump card. Ouyang Tianxing's voice was filled with unconcealable confidence. Qingguang didn't want to bother with this guy who was completely immersed in fanaticism. Forget it. Since that's what he planned to do, I don't have to worry about it. I was just worrying about how to pretend to be a corpse and pretend to be dead so that one wouldn't be held back by me. It was finally 8 in the morning. The sun was already halfway up. The morning sunlight shone on the ground and cast long shadows on the people who were walking over. Ouyang Tianxing stood on the peak of the mountain with his hands behind his back. He looked down at the people who were coming, as if he was a king waiting for his subjects to worship him. Under his instructions, the other evil sect martial artists who were hiding in the underground caves either tightened their grip on the guns in their hands or threw away the firearms that they looked down on like brooms on the ground. In their hands, they held onto the concealed weapons that they were good at. Why is Mr. Ng different from what we agreed on? The demoness of the Wen family is strong now. He should be hiding in here. We should act according to what we agreed on and give these people a show of strength, right? Demon Sovereign Jiao stepped on the sniper rifle. He didn't like this thing. If it wasn't for Mr. Ying's request, he would have preferred to fight 300 rounds with any random opponent. Evil Monarch, you played with the weapon in his hands with interest. The things of the modern people do have some tricks. If this bullet hits us at close range, even the two of us will be in trouble. You don't have to worry for Mr. Ng. He has his own methods. Demon Sovereign Jiao swallowed his saliva. To be honest, the current Mr. Ng is really different from the past. Am I hallucinating? He's so King domineering. Although the two of us are considered experts, I really don't dare to face the demoness of the Wen family like he did. Evil Monarchy nodded. As he tried to aim the scope at Wenwen, he snorted. I don't dare either. I don't even know what rock this little girl came from. Traveling monk's son, a monster, a natural monster. At this moment, even the two sect masters had the same thoughts, much less the others. Wenwen first glared at evil Monarchy, who was aiming at her from the wall, causing this evil sect master to feel a chill in his heart. Then, he turned to look at Ouyang Tianxing on the mountain peak. This person must be the expert hiding behind the evil sects to guide them. He was rather surprised. He thought that he would continue hiding, or he would directly tie up Qingguang somewhere and force him to submit. He never expected that he would dare to stand on a mountain peak like a true pugilistic world expert. One family sect master, do you dare to fight with me? Ouyang Tianxing shouted. He lived like a thief for most of his life, carefully managing everything he had. Like an oil thief, he slowly nibbled away at the pugilistic world. Then, people watched as he built a tall building, and watched as his building collapsed. Then, he fled like a stray dog. Then, he watched as the one family, which he saw as a turtle in a jar, suddenly produced a peerless genius. No one could understand Ouyang Tianxing's extremely bitter mental journey. Even when he said those words, he couldn't believe it. Would I, Ouyang Tianxing, also have such a bright and upright day? After walking in the darkness for so long, he finally obtained unimaginable power. He could finally stand under the sunlight and feel so good. One flew up and unsheathed her blade. If you want to fight, I will fight for you. But where's the person? Where is the antidote? Ouyang Tianxing waved his hand, and Chen Guang's metal bed was placed vertically by the two young fellows. He opened his hand again, and a small white jade bottle appeared in his palm. The person is here, and the antidote is also here. But it depends on whether you have a life to take it. Wenwen landed on the ground and stood about 10 meters in front of Ouyang Tianxing. Her inner strength surged out from her body, and black mist surged out from the black blade. I thought you would use Chen Guang's life to threaten me. Ha ha ha, you're looking down on me. My hands are more than enough to kill you. Chen Guang, who was confident that he would win, rolled his eyes silently. This person's ability aside, the thickness of his skin was as thick as mine. Wenwen sneered, then turned to look at Chen Guang. She tried her best to control her emotions and asked, "Are you all right?" Xian Qin and Wu Miao Wan shouted in unison. "Chen Guang, how are you?" Chen Guang grinned. "Hey, I'm in peace now. Everything is fine." At that moment, he shouted from the bottom of his heart, "Thief, I'm coming." In the distance, where no one noticed, a seemingly ordinary glass cup suddenly burst out of the ground. Then, as if it had wings, it flew toward Chen Guang. Chen Guang's smile finally bloomed. "Oh my God, Lady Liuli, you finally made it." Liuli's voice was tired and excited. "I have good news for you. Please speak. I've succeeded in skipping levels again." "What do you mean?" "The heavenly immortal realm's heavenly clear sky. How is it?" "What?" "I don't quite understand." "If you want to cultivate inner strength, you have to at least reach the 4th level, the heavenly clear sky in a cup, but you've only reached the 2nd level, one-line sky. This Empress spent a lot of effort, calculated meticulously, and coordinated with the Holy Grail, just like how you build Legos in this world. After carefully planning for a long time, this heavenly clear sky cup's heavenly immortal realm was finally built successfully. When the heavenly clear sky cup was activated, something happened. The fusion of the real world and your real world caused this heavenly clear sky to change, and it became the heavenly immortal cup's heavenly immortal realm at the same level as the transient sea. What you have to cultivate is an inner martial art that the 4th level can withstand. How is it? This Empress is awesome, right? My sister, you're so strong. This is indeed a grand plan. If it wasn't for the fact that he was afraid of being seen through, old Master Guang would have been moved to tears. No wonder Liuli couldn't get away for so long. No wonder it was so difficult to carry out her grand plan. When he leveled up from Spirit Sky to One-Line Sky, the illusion in his mind was that he had walked to the edge of the universe. It was obvious how difficult it was for this unlucky Holy Grail to level up. Now, in order for him to cultivate inner strength, she had actually forcefully skipped 2 levels, skipped the 3rd level, Cloud Elephant Sky, and reached Heavenly Clear Sky. The difficulty was unimaginable. I've always blamed you wrongly. Actually, you still love me. Chen Guang stared at Ouyang Tianxing's back fiercely. Bastard, just you wait. When I reach Heavenly Clear Sky, I'll come back and show you why the flowers are so red. On the other side, Wenwen and Ouyang Tianxing were already exchanging blows at lightning speed. Chapter 900. Wenwen unsheathed the black cleaver. The inner force of the painting scroll gushed out from the 7 stars transformation in her elixir field, filling her body like a rainbow. A terrifying strength chi surged out from her body. With her, as the center, the chi carried the mud and broken leaves on the top of the mountain and turned into a spiral, quickly spreading out in all directions. In an instant, it enveloped a radius of several dozen feet. In this spiral, the black gas that gushed out from the black cleaver mixed with the yellow sand, tearing apart every inch of the air. Taoist Song Song and Panda, who were standing not far behind Wenwen, quickly waved their hands when they saw the situation. Retreat. Wenwen's first move was already so powerful. Everyone was worried that if they continued to stand there, they would be scratched by her indiscriminate force. Touch would mean injury. Touch would mean death. Even Taoist Song Song, who had been at the pinnacle of skin force for many years and had a lot of experience, did not dare to touch the tiger's whiskers. The difference in their realm was too great. They could not be mentioned in the same breath. But the group did not only retreat, they also observed the situation as they retreated. Before they came here, they discussed until their heads were dizzy. No one knew how Chen Guang would become a hostage. The worst outcome will be to not see him when they arrived at the scene. Right now, Chen Guang was tied to the metal bed, and there wasn't a better situation for him to be in. As long as they could save him, sect leader Wen would no longer be hindered. Then, they could defeat Ouyang Tianxing, who overestimated himself, and all the problems would be solved. When the secretive Mr. Ng finally introduced himself and admitted that he was Ouyang Tianxing, Xianqin, Wu Miaowan, and Taoist Song Song were not too surprised. First, since things had come to this, there was no difference whether they were surprised or not. Second, the Special Affairs Bureau seemed to be assisting the Huaxia higher-ups in communicating with the martial artists, but the Special Affairs Bureau was actually crooked from start. Moreover, when the Special Affairs Bureau was destroyed, Ouyang Tianxing fought his way out alone. He did not die. As one of the more upright ones among the 8 great sects, Taoist Vas Kalo had crossed paths with Ouyang Tianxing a few times in the past, and boasted that he had a good understanding of this person's background. Taoist Vas Kalo protected Xianqin and Wu Miaowan as they retreated. He looked at Ouyang Tianxing, who was unmoving like a mountain, and said joyfully, "This Ouyang Tianxing is really overestimating himself. I really don't know where he gets his courage to fight sect leader when head-on." Panda, the fist tyrant, had the same opinion. This guy has been cautious his whole life, but now he's acting heroically for once. I wonder how many moves he can take. Right now, sect leader Wen's aura is at its peak, but Ouyang Tianxing has yet to accumulate his strength. He's going to die. That's right. I just don't know what else he has up his sleeve. Not to mention the martial artists from the Guangding headquarters. Even the evil martial artists from the Shadow Alliance felt their hearts skip a beat. Although he knew that it was rare for Mr. Ng to be so bold. Maybe he wanted to prove something, but which one was about to use her ultimate move? Wasn't he being too careless? Ignorant. Arrogant. Die. Half of Wenwen's attention was on Chen Guang, and the other half on Ouyang Tianxing. Seeing that he was looking down on her, she thought to herself and spat. She then exerted strength in her legs, and with the tornado around her, she transformed into a black and yellow dragon and pounced forward. In the blink of an eye, the tornado that Wenwen had transformed in brought along a trail of dust and gravel and appeared in front of Ouyang Tianxing. With a crisp clang, the tornado suddenly dispersed, leaving behind a long saber that was as black as ink. It left a flowing light in the air as it slashed at Ouyang Tianxing. This saber, it was extremely domineering. It was as fast as lightning. On this morning when the sun had just risen, in the eyes of the spectators, it was as if the light of the rising sun had been stolen. In this world, it was as if there was only this stunning saber left. Everyone who was watching felt as if time had slowed down at this moment. Everyone could clearly see the tornado that had suddenly dispersed, and Wenwen, who was dressed in white, slashed down from the sky with the black saber in her hand. This seemingly simple strike contained some sort of profound martial arts. The killing intent was overflowing to the extreme, but it also gave birth to a feeling of compassion for the state of the universe. Just like what was written in Wen Tianxiang's Song of Righteousness, which one used to enter the path, there was righteousness in heaven and earth. The buzzing sound grew louder, probably caused by the friction when the saber sliced through the air. Two visible air currents were split into two. In the blink of an eye, the black-slash saber turned into a flowing light and was about to slash Ouyang Tianxing's head. Bam! Ouyang Tianxing finally moved. He raised his left hand and pinched his thumb and middle finger. There was a flash of green light on his fingertip, and an invisible force was born from his fingertip. It ignored the long saber that was slashing down, and the force went straight for Wen's chest. At the same time, he raised his right hand into the shape of a claw. There seemed to be black scales on his fingers and the back of his hand, but they were actually formed by the force. His right claw did not dodge, and it went straight for the black-slash saber. It was a loud clang. Ouyang Tianxing's right claw and the black-slash saber collided, but the saber did not cut off his hand as easily as many people had imagined. Wen held the saber with one hand, and her left hand was in the shape of a claw in front of her chest. Smoke came out of her palm as she slowly flew backwards. This was the first time they had fought, but Wen did not gain any advantage. In an instant, everyone was in an uproar. There were people who recognized the martial arts that Ouyang Tianxing was using, and they shouted it out. "Oh my God, that's the Chu family's thunder flicking finger, and the Xing family's Yama claw of condemnation. How is that possible?" Among the other 10 experts who came with Xi and Qin and the others, a white-haired old man, who was especially old, called out the name. Panda exclaimed, "How is that possible? The Xing clan and Chu clan's external techniques require their own unique internal techniques to be used. Could it be?" That elder inhaled a cold breath. That's right. Ouyang Tianxing also knows the Chu clan's 6 god rules and the Xing clan's hell rules. No wonder the two aristocratic clans have not appeared in recent years. No wonder the pugilistic world is in such a mess, and no one can find any traces of them. The two aristocratic clans are probably dead. Taoist Song Song said, but even though Ouyang Tianxing has the absolute techniques of the two clans, his realm doesn't seem to be as good as Sect Master Wen's. Why are the two of them evenly matched? The elder sighed. I don't know either. Even Wen was at a loss, much less the people outside. She had used all her strength in her saber, but it was blocked with a single hand. How is it? Do you still think I don't have the qualifications to fight with you? Ouyang Tianxing's voice was filled with indescribable carefreeness. Demon Sovereign Jiao, Evil Monarch Yu, Long Dingtian, Ghost Shadow, and the others who had just sneaked out were now standing behind Qinguang and shouting in unison. Especially the people from the Poison Clan and Dark Clan, they were exceptionally excited. For the past few months, the pugilistic world's experts, who were considered heroes, had become street rats and lived in constant fear. Once the experts from their sects were caught by Wen, they would flee in panic, but they couldn't escape and were slaughtered by her like chickens and dogs. On the other hand, more and more people from the pugilistic world joined the orthodox Guangding headquarters, which made it even more difficult for them. If it wasn't for Mr. Ying's resourcefulness and his special methods to control everyone, these people might not have lasted until now and would have betrayed them long ago. Now, they could finally hold their heads up high. Mr. Ying is mighty. Mr. Ying is invincible. On the other side, Ouyang Tianxing's attack was successful. The others were either happy or worried. Only Qinguang sensed that when the two of them fought, an elemental power that was exactly the same as the world-shattering holy tribe came from Ouyang Tianxing's side. Although this ripple wasn't strong and was far inferior to the world-shattering holy tribe's warriors, in today's battle, coupled with Ouyang Tianxing's original inner strength martial arts, it had a miraculous effect. He actually succeeded in showing off. My cup come quickly, Qinguang muttered in his heart. On the other side, Wen and Ouyang Tianxing fought again after a short standoff. The two of them fought higher and higher, and the air was filled with energy. Both of them were actually evenly matched. These two people can actually walk in the air. It's fine if Sectmaster one can do it. After all, she is a rare genius that only appears once in 1,000 years. But this Ouyang Tianxing, how is it possible? Haha. Not only is Mr. Ng the most intelligent person in the world, his martial arts cultivation is also on par with one family's demoness. This is our Shadow Alliance's blessing. The evil faction martial artists in Shadow Alliance were in high spirits. The people for the headquarters were even more depressed and worried. In the meantime, the headquarters martial artists led by Taoist Song Song tried to sneak in Chen Guang's direction several times. However, they were all blocked by the people lying in ambush. Chen Guang looked up at the two people fighting in the air. He was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. He urged Azure in his heart. "Hurry up, Lady Azure. Shut up." Although the two people in the air seemed to be evenly matched as long as he was a hostage, Ouyang Tianxing was in an undefeatable position. Moreover, although this guy was the self-proclaimed world-shattering Holy Lord, since he had mastered the ability to transform into yellow sand, one couldn't kill him. In this world, this guy only had one natural enemy, and that was the person who completely suppressed him in terms of cultivation level. That person's cultivation level had regressed, and that person was me, the Earth-Paste Exploder. Chen Guang still remembered the formation called Endless Reincarnation Wheel that the three elders of the world-shattering Holy Tribe had created. If he was not wrong, since Ouyang Tianxing chose to fight here, he couldn't have just prepared a sniper machine gun to act cute. Especially this mountaintop. It was filled with extremely dense elemental power. Using his consciousness, it was very similar to the Endless Reincarnation Wheel. This also meant that it was very likely that Ouyang Tianxing possessed an inexhaustible amount of power in this region. Just as he was thinking about this, the two people who were fighting in the air suddenly stopped moving. In the next instant, the two of them fell from a height of 10 meters. Ouyang Tianxing was lying on the ground, but his body blocked Wenwen, so Chen Guang couldn't see Wenwen's movements from below. However, the long blade pierced through Ouyang Tianxing's back. He was lying on the ground, but his limbs were spread out, and he didn't move at all. The previously excited Shadow Alliance evil faction warriors were all speechless. Instead, it was Taoist Vaskalo and the rest who were ecstatic. While these people were in a daze, Xian Qin and Wu Miaowan, who had been paying attention to Chen Guang, looked at each other and made up their minds. Here's our chance. Xian Qin's thin figure suddenly disappeared into the crowd. She turned into a flash of light and went straight for Chen Guang's metal bed. Only Chen Guang suddenly had a bad feeling. He shouted, "Wenwen, be careful." The others didn't know, but Chen Guang knew. Ouyang Tianxing was playing a trick. There was no blood coming out from the place where the blade pierced through his back. It's too late. Ouyang Tianxing, who was pretending to be a corpse in the sky, suddenly laughed. In the next instant, Chen Guang's pupils contracted. This guy's elemental power was completely activated. Ouyang Tianxing finally used his ultimate move. The others only saw Ouyang Tianxing's right fist suddenly grow bigger and then fly above him like a cannonball. Creaking sounds came from the place where the blade pierced through. It was obvious that Wenwen wanted to retract her blade, but he had turned his body into rock and stopped her. When Wenwen realized something was wrong, Ouyang Tianxing's rock fist had already landed on her shoulder that was holding the blade. Although she had internal energy to protect her body, she was still sent flying by the terrifying force. The black blade fell out of her hand. The two landed separately. Ouyang Tianxing stood in front of Chen Guang with his hands behind his back. "How was it? Did you like the taste of this punch?" In the distance, Wenwen clutched her shoulder and stared at them. She didn't understand what was going on. She had almost reached the limit of a martial artist, and she had even surpassed the strongest master of the one family recorded in the family's ancient books. How could she lose? But Ouyang Tianxing's situation was too strange. For the first time, she realized that she might not be his opponent. "Clown, get lost." Xian Qin had already rushed in front of Chen Guang. Ouyang Tianxing had his hands behind his back and didn't even look in her direction. He raised his left hand without turning his head. Qi burst out from his fingertips. It was the Chu family's finger-snapping thunder. The moment the Qi appeared, it shot towards Xianqing's head like a bullet. While it didn't look powerful, everyone knew that with the power that Ouyang Tianqing displayed, Xianqing, who was merely at the peak of bone strength, would die instantly. Bam! The finger-snapping thunder didn't hit Xianqing's body. It was blocked by a hand that suddenly reached out. Although this hand was also blown into pieces and only half of the wrist bone was left, it was still blocked in the end. Xianqing was stunned. Wu Miaowan and Taoist Song Song were stunned as well. Wen, who was trying her best to regulate her inner qi and control her injuries, was stunned as well. Long Dingtian was the first to shout, "Didn't I shatter all your bones? How can you move?" The person who blocked the finger-snapping thunder was Chen Guang, who broke free from the hemp rope and forcefully used his right palm to block in front of Xianqing's head. Ouyang Tianqing turned around and wasn't overly surprised. In his previous life, he was the elemental controller, Right Chun, who single-handedly destroyed the world-shattering Saint clan. Ouyang Tianqing turned around and wasn't overly surprised. In his previous life, he was the elemental controller, Right Chun, who single-handedly destroyed the world-shattering Saint clan. But it was useless. His broken wrist had started to bleed. The finger-snapping thunder contained the Six Gods' Law inner force that was wreaking havoc in his body. His aura was rapidly weakening. He didn't have much longer to live, and this was worse than committing suicide by cutting his wrist. Chen Guang's blood sprayed out and dripped onto Xianqing's face. After a brief moment of absent-mindedness, she suddenly wailed, "Chen Guang, Chief Chen." Taoist Song Song saw that the situation wasn't good and immediately formed a formation to protect Wu Miaowan. Wu Miaowan had a medical kit with her, and she could still be saved in time. Wen, who was already severely injured, couldn't be bothered about her injuries as she activated her inner qi again and charged forward. "Don't even think about succeeding." Demon Sovereign Jiao and the others didn't wait for Ouyang Tianqing's order and took the initiative to face Taoist Song Song and the others. The other martial artists that were hiding in the mountain started to open fire, and bullets rained down on everyone. Ouyang Tianqing laughed maniacally. "Forget it. I originally wanted to let you live a little longer. But since you're seeking death, I won't stop you. As for the others, all of you shall die." Ouyang Tianqing raised his hand again, and a thunderous sound rose from his abdomen. The Chu clan's 6 God laws and Xing clan's Hell Palace rules were activated at the same time. 2 waves of inner qi flew out from his palms like dragons, one towards Wen, and the other towards Taoist Song Song and the others. When the rumbling stopped, Wen flew back a few steps from the impact, and Taoist Song Song and the others were in an even more tragic state. They all vomited blood as they flew back, and along the way, they were hit by the sneak attacks. The fist tyrant, Panda, had a palm-sized wound on his chest. Wu Miaowan, who was protecting him from behind, coughed up blood from the impact of the blow. The others were all sprawled all over the ground. Even the most experienced and knowledgeable old man spat out blood and fell to the ground dead. On the other hand, Xianqing was already standing beside Chen Guang. She pulled down her sleeves and tried to bind Chen Guang's wrist to stop the bleeding, and tears flowed uncontrollably from her eyes. But Chen Guang did not move. He raised his left hand expressionlessly and caught the heavenly holy grail that was flying towards him from behind. With a flick of his left index finger, he opened the lid of the grail. With the holy grail in hand, the world is mine. Ha ha! What's a little bit of blood? At a time like this, let me drink some water to calm my nerves. He raised the grail with his left hand and drank as if he was toasting the moon. But what entered his mouth was not water, but mud. Damn it, Lord Lu Li, what the hell are you doing? Chen Guang felt extremely awkward. His image was completely ruined. You still have the cheek to say that? Someone snatched the grail and threw it into the trash. When I rushed out of the trash with the grail, I thought that the immortal heaven's world of cups should at least have some space and not an empty grail. That's why I was considerate enough to fill it with mud for you. Who asked you to not forget to act cool at a time like this? Lu Li's ridicule was tit for tat. Oh, all right. Thank you for your consideration. On the other side, Ouyang Tianqing laughed out loud. Right, Chun, are you crazy? An earth great magician can recover his strength by eating soil? Chen Guang smiled. In Ouyang Tianqing's eyes, his expression was rather strange. That's right. When people are down and out, they should eat more soil. That way, they can really make a comeback. Wait a second. I'll teach you a lesson. Come to me. Ascend to the heavens. Chapter 901. Ha 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 ha. Chen Guang laughed maniacally. He was about to enter the world in the cup. Although he did not know what the world in the cup was like this time, and did not know how long he would stay in there. But the things in the outside world would definitely not pass by much, and others would not be able to sense any changes. So, I have to create an illusion that my aura suddenly increased while I laughed maniacally, and my strength increased rapidly. That's right. Although I was really a pig that could not eat a tiger, I cannot be afraid. I have to give people the illusion that I was hiding my strength. I have to let them understand that they have offended a terrifying person. I have to let them tremble in fear of my black-bellied nature. I have to let them know that I was actually using the mentality of a cat toying with a mouse to look at everything. Although the truth was not like that. On the surface, I definitely could not lose in terms of aura. His laughter became more and more smug, more and more arrogant, more and more domineering, and more confident. Although his current actions were a little intentional, it did not matter. He was the best actor in history, a living fossil among the veteran actors. Not only did he look like he acted in front of the camera, he could also achieve whatever effect he wanted normally. He would definitely get into character instantly, without a script, resolutely put an end to awkwardness, and give the most perfect performance to the audience. At this moment, everyone present could feel his astonishing and inexplicable confidence. Confusion, sympathy, and other extremely complicated emotions were born in everyone's hearts, and they quickly evolved in this order. Slowly, everyone felt that something was wrong. What was wrong with this bro? Did he lose so much blood that he went crazy? Did he think he was going to die, so he went crazy? Honestly, brother, your exploded hand is still bleeding, and you are so happy. Aren't you going to die? Tragic, too tragic. This is the hysteria before death. Even Ouyang Tianqing, the instigator of all this, felt a sense of desolation. Sigh, Chen Guang was able to come this far. Although he was a little lucky, luck was also a part of his strength. After all, he had once forced me, Ouyang Tianqing, into a corner. He was also once a hero who commanded an area of the Doa world. Falling to this day is really a hero past his prime. It makes people sigh with emotion. Chen Guang gripped the Holy Grail so tightly that his knuckles turned white. He had been laughing for a full 10 seconds, but there was still no movement. He did not know why, but he was a little panicked. Lady Crystal, pull me in. This is so awkward. Huh? We will wait until you are done laughing. Don't. Lord Lioli, don't mess with me. You scolded me just now. Who? Who is so daring? He even dares to scold a dignified divine emperor. Lord Luli, tell me, I'll go beat him to death. What do you think? Who are you talking about just now? What the hell are you talking about? I was wrong, I was really wrong. My dearest and greatest Lady Crystal, please give me another chance. Unknowingly, he had been laughing for a full 20 seconds. He was almost out of breath, but at this time he couldn't breathe. As the saying goes, one spurt of energy, the second spurts of energy, the third spurts of energy, and the second spurts of energy. Acting cool had to be done in one breath. Once he breathed, his momentum would be weakened, and he would be embarrassed. All right. Seeing that your apology is commendable, this empress will forgive you as always. Come in. The scene in front of him flowed like water. The next moment, Chen Guang, who was laughing so hard that he was out of breath, suddenly appeared in Cloud City. Ha! Cough. I say, why do you have to do this? Lioli's voice came from about a meter or two in front of Chen Guang. But when he looked up, he felt that it was empty. Where is he? Stop asking, or I will beat you. Chen Guang, what? Dear Mingguo said from a distance outside the wall. Chen Guang, don't take it for granted. In order to help you build the middle realm of the Green Sky Cup, Sister Liuli consumed a lot of divine power. Not to mention the lustrous feather raiment. She can't even maintain her body. That's right. Now, my body has almost become transparent. Do you know how good I am to you? Liuli snorted. Chen Guang narrowed his eyes and looked ahead. As expected, it was not completely empty in front of him, but he could vaguely see extremely blurry traces like flowing water, which made the light coming from a distance seem to be refracted through the flowing water. Terrible. This time was really terrible. He had waited for so long until she couldn't even gather the clouds to cover her embarrassment. But in the end, she was completely transparent. This feeling was as painful as waiting for a female star to be naked. But in the end, she was really naked. It was also as sad as going to an infantry film. But in the end, she was the Calabash brothers. Liuli was shocked. It's hopeless. This guy's wretchedness was deeply engraved in his bones. Even if his hand outside had exploded and blood was spurting out like a fountain. After coming in, the thoughts in his mind were still crooked. Hit! Liuli, who had turned transparent, kicked Chen Guang's chin from the bottom up. As the saying goes, dying under a peony flower is still romantic even as a ghost. Just like that, old Master Guang was kicked into the air with infinite regret. The space-time tunnel in the air disappeared in a flash, swallowing Chen Guang, who was flying in the air. Falling into the tunnel, Chen Guang also stopped teasing Su Tao and raised his guard. With his first experience in the hidden sea, Chen Guang knew that the immortal heaven was definitely not inferior to the hidden sea at the same level. It was very likely that he would be chased the moment he entered, just like the previous time. So he had to be fully focused. No matter who it was, no matter what was waiting for me, the old man was no longer an ignorant person. Although he wasn't a top-notch expert, the old man was now a bone force martial artist and had a perfect body. He also had the super strong regenerative ability of the earth paste exploder. If he was really unhappy, he would condense a mud ball on his finger and burst his forehead. Ouyang Tianxing's move just now seemed to be called something like finger flick. It's a bit similar to the divine flicking finger written in wuxia novels. This move is very suitable for me. Together with this old man's ultimate dart technique, I'll let you have a taste of the Chun clan's divine flicking finger with a snap of my right finger. My hand. Chen Guang lowered his head to look at his wrist that only had a fire stick left. His right forearm was completely devoid of a palm. He was completely dumbfounded. At this moment, the wound on his broken forearm had completely healed. It looked like a standard disabled person. If he were to lie down on the street, he could earn 10,000 a month just from selling bowls. What happened to the earth paste exploder's invincible healing? Why did it heal me like this? I can't really be a Venus with a broken arm for the rest of my life, right? Oh, no. Azure's voice sounded. Who told you to come in with a broken arm? The Holy Grail reconstructed your spiritual body according to your condition. It's already good enough that you didn't continue to bleed. All right, stop howling. When you come out from this world in the cup, the Holy Grail will reconstruct your entire physical body in order to allow your external body to quickly reach its training target. This arm will grow back. This sounds like I'm repairing relics in the Forbidden City. Then what do you want? Forget it. It's fine. Wait, does this mean that my arm will be broken the entire time I'm in the world in the cup? Forget it. Thinking about it. Yanghua only became stronger after losing his arm. One arm will allow me to be more focused. With my hand speed of being single for 20 years, my left arm will be ridiculously strong. Yanghua's arm was broken at the base. Do you need me to thoughtfully stab him? Forget it. Right, the last time I was in the Sea of Time, I had to live in there for half a year. This time, I'll give you 4 words. Hello, Duo Fu. Goodbye, Duo Fu. Before Qin Guang could finish his sentence, he reached the end of the space-time tunnel. When he opened his eyes, he saw a blue sky and blue clouds. It was a beautiful sight. The bright sun was slowly floating in the sky. At this moment, he was lying down. That was great. It wasn't like the last time where he had to kneel and wait to be beheaded. He was lying down. How blissful. He stretched, and then got up to announce to the world that the old man was here. At the same time, the heavenly Holy Grail's electronic notification sounded in his ears. Mission location, True Martial Land. Mission objective, become the true martial sage before dying 100 times. Chen Guang nodded silently. Although he didn't know what kind of person the true martial sage was, nor did he know how to become a martial sage, it didn't matter. He could slowly figure out later. It was still the familiar 100 revival chances. Although it was a little stingy with his talent and wit, it shouldn't be a problem. Just as he was thinking about this, a black light suddenly flashed across the sky before him. The next moment, he saw his own headless corpse again. Strange, why did I say again? That's right, his head flew off again. F***CK. The eighth heaven of the immortal god heaven was toxic. Did it have to be like this? Why was his posture and situation so awkward every time he appeared? The last time, he was pressed to the ground and beheaded. This time, it was even worse. He was actually lying flat on a dog's head guillotine. The flying head was still looking around in midair. Chen Guang finally saw the situation clearly. This was a standard scene from a television drama. It was a busy street in an ancient city. Below it, there were countless people dressed in coarse hemp clothes acting as extras. Among them, there were several people with different expressions and dressed in standard swordsman's robes. The strong chopstick wielder, whose face was covered in blood, was looking back at the high platform. He bowed and reported something to the smug and relieved officials. Reported to my lord, the notorious rapist Chen Guang is dead. The remaining evildoers of the Valley of the Vile have all been killed. Chen Guang was so angry that he laughed. Ha! F***CK. Isn't the setting of my entrance a little too crazy? I'm such an upright person. Why was it a hapless rapist? And what the hell are the remnants of the Valley of the Vile? What he meant was that he was in a worse situation than the last time. Not only was he alone, but he was also notorious. From the looks of it, he was a wanted criminal by the authorities of the Jinwu land. What was the old man to do? At least give me some memory of raping. At least let me know which family's daughter I raped, whether she was pretty or not, and whether she was worth it. I should at least have some happy memories, right? What a loss. Also, this deceiving official must be an unscrupulous sadist. When you use a dog's head guillotine to behead someone, do you make the criminal face up? Don't they always show people lying on the ground? Then I will definitely be more vigilant. I won't lose my life. I can't accept this. I was plotted against. Chapter 902. The Heavenly Holy Grail's notification came. Congratulations, Redeemer, on your first death. Please prepare for resurrection. Chen Guang said, Congratulations my ass. Are you a monkey sent by a clown? Why don't you celebrate with me? The Heavenly Holy Grail naturally ignored his ridicule. The familiar time reversal was like pressing the rewind button when playing a video. Whoosh! The scene changed, and Chen Guang resurrected for the first time. He lay under the dog-headed guillotine again. Chen Guang turned his head and saw the strong executioner with one hand on the huge blade of the dog-headed guillotine. This guy made his move. Chen Guang began to struggle, shouting, Spare my life. According to the plots of wuxia dramas, the mantra, Spare my life, was equivalent to a death exemption card. But it was useless. The executioner didn't even blink. With a flip of his palm, the big guillotine flipped over and slashed at Chen Guang's neck. Before Chen Guang could break free from the shackles on his neck, the guillotine came down. The dramas in the TV series were all lies. Chen Guang cursed in his heart as he raised his left hand to grab the guillotine. His right hand, which had turned into a fire stick, stabbed at the wooden shackles on his neck. Crack! The 5 fingers of his left hand suddenly exerted force with the vital energy of the Danxing scroll and tightly gripped the extremely heavy guillotine. The fire stick was quite useful in his right hand, and it stabbed at the wooden shackles. With a crisp sound, the wooden shackles snapped. His left hand pushed upwards with force, and the guillotine bounced off. Chen Guang then did a carp flip and stood up straight on the execution platform. For a moment, The execution platform was in chaos. The pot-bellied official wearing a black veil shrank his neck and hid behind the crowd as he shouted, "All of you attack! Chop this vicious villain to death!" The executioner who had failed to carry out the execution pulled out a large, thick-backed machete and slashed at Chen Guang's head. The surrounding soldiers holding spears, sticks, knives, and swords all rushed forward while shouting. Instead of panicking, the people in the bustling city below were indescribably excited. They clenched their fists, blushed, and opened their mouths. Their faces were filled with joy and excitement. They were the standard bystanders. As a newcomer, Chen Guang didn't know how strong the people of the land of true martial arts were. Therefore, he didn't dare to be careless. He turned around, raised his hand, and unleashed his full strength. He grabbed the knife with his left hand and used his right hand as a stick to stab the executioner's stomach with all his strength. With a loud bang, the man let out a blood-curdling scream as he was sent flying several hundred feet away. Then, he fell straight into the crowd of onlookers below. Chen Guang was momentarily stunned as he looked down at his right hand. Were the people in this world particularly weak, or did he become stronger after coming here? When he grabbed the guillotine just now, he felt that the increase in strength when he activated his inner force was higher than in the real world, but the time was too short to be sure. Now that he had punched someone else, even if he had used all his strength, it was still a bit exaggerated to send such a strong man flying more than 100 feet away. Circulating the same inner strength, the power released was several times stronger than in the real world. Although he didn't know the principle behind it, he was sure that there was something in the land of Jinwu that could strengthen a martial artist's practice and circulation of inner strength. Perhaps it was air? Forget it. Don't worry about the details. Even though the man had sent him flying so far away, he didn't explode in the air like a piece of tofu. It was clear that the physiques of the natives of the true martial land weren't easy to deal with. He had become stronger. These aborigines of the true martial arts continent, even if they were only paid executioners, should be much stronger than ordinary earthlings. The situation was too unclear. Of the 36 stratagems, retreat was the best. Chen Guang brandished the thick-backed machete with his left hand, spinning it above his head like a flower. He dashed around the execution platform and broke free from several people. Finally, he rushed to the side of the execution platform and shouted, "Get out of my way!" Then, he jumped down, brandishing his machete. The onlookers seemed to be very experienced. They all dodged to the side in unison. After landing heavily on the ground, Chen Guang broke through the crowd and continued to rush forward. "How dare you, a rapist? You're about to die, yet you still dare to rob the execution ground?" Among the crowd, a man who looked like a swordsman drew his sword with a clang and charged forward, shouting, "Rob your face. The old man is trying to save himself. I'll pluck your face." Seeing that he was dressed in a swordsman's outfit and wore a crown, he looked like a young Jianghu swordsman. Chen Guang thought that he might be a master since he used all his strength to swing his machete. When the sword and the machete collided, the swordsman's hand went numb. He lost all his strength in an instant. His fingers loosened, and the long sword flew out, piercing into the door beam of a brothel 10 feet away. The swordsman held his hand and retreated a few steps. Blood dripped from his palm, and his face was pale. "How is this possible? When I caught you yesterday, you were just a muggle. How can you have inner strength now?" Chen Guang was even dumber than him. Muggle? What kind of joke was this? Why did it sound a little familiar? Besides, wasn't this Jinwu University? It would be strange if he didn't have inner strength. If you don't have it, don't do it. "Whoever dares to stop me again, I will not show mercy. Those who stand in my way will die." Chen Guang was very puzzled, but he shouted again and again. The thick machete circled around his body, knocking away countless weapons of the soldiers behind him. He didn't know any machete skills, so he waved the machete with brute force. But when he exerted all his strength, it was like when he punched out before. The mist in front of the machete was dense, and he actually slashed out knife chi. After all, he didn't control his strength well. Several of the most arrogant soldiers who rushed to the front to take his life were cut in the waist by the knife chi. With blood spurting from their stomachs, they took a few steps back and fell to the ground dead. Inner strength. Oh my God. This rapist has mastered inner strength. He is no longer a muggle. Another martial disciple has been born, and he is also a rapist. It's really a great misfortune for our thunder-mad magic city. Whether it was the state officials who were hiding in the distance, the soldiers who were continuing to rush forward but were shocked and did not dare to go further, or the onlookers who were flying back to the distance, they were all in an uproar. Guang was more confused than them. You are the aborigines of Zhenwu land. Do you have to be so surprised to see inner strength? You guys are making me very disheartened, okay? He also realized that it was strange. From the time he broke free from the execution platform to the present, he had fought against no less than 20 people, but none of them had inner strength. Damn, could it be that the cup world that Luli prepared for me has become a shrunken and incomplete version? Has the core function been reduced? People in this world don't have inner strength? Then why should I practice it? With such thoughts in mind, Guang rushed to the gate of Thunder Mad Magic City, which was named particularly domineering, and left. Guang, the last survivor of the Vile Valley, who was supposed to be executed in the downtown area, suddenly possessed internal energy. News of this spread throughout the city at a speed faster than Guang's escape. He rushed all the way, but no one dared to stop him. After leaving the city, Guang randomly chose a direction and ran away until he went deep into the jungle where there was no one. He stopped to take a breath and communicate with Lu Li in his heart. Miss Lu Li, give me an answer. I have something important to ask. What do you want to ask? When you settle down, the truth of this Zhenwu land will appear in front of you. Why? Don't you believe in my ability? Are you afraid that I have cheated you? Guang thought, you have cheated me many times. However, since she was unwilling to say, Guang did not dare to ask more. This lord was quite narrow-minded and could not be offended. No, absolutely not. Miss Lu Li, you have worked hard. I am very satisfied with the Zhenwu land. Okay, if there is nothing else, I will take a nap and rest first. I am too tired. Wait a minute. Why was I a rapist at the beginning? I will only ask this question. Guang was very unhappy about this. I am such a decent person, but I did not do anything and was made into a rapist at the beginning. It was simply heartless. You can't blame yourself. Why? Before the so-called world in the cup is truly born, there's a general outline. For example, you will know the level of the world in the cup and what kind of ability you will be training. However, the immortal God Heavenly Cup's world of true martial, which has a complete worldview, is actually formed the moment you enter the world in the cup based on your state at that time. Before you entered the world in the cup, you had evil thoughts in your heart, and your thoughts were impure. It was natural for you to be a rapist at the beginning. Who told you not to be awe-inspiring at that time? Otherwise, you would have been a disciple of a famous sect, right? Now you're a survivor of the Valley of the Vile. Just thinking about it makes me feel ashamed for you. Okay, he dug his own grave, so he could not blame Lu Li. Looking left and right, there was no one else. Guang silently covered his face. Fortunately, no one else knew about this. This was a stain on his life. After wandering alone in the forest for a long time, he felt a little hungry. He also felt that this was not the way to go, so he simply sneaked in the direction of the Thunderclap Wild Demon City. He was quite distressed. If there was no one else with inner strength besides him, how could he become a martial sage? Also, what kind of level could one be called a martial sage? Just like what he did before, when he displayed it in front of so many people, could it be considered as bravery? With the old man's physical body and inner strength that others did not have in the era of cold weapons, would he not be a proper invincible martial sage? While he was thinking about it in a daze, the heavenly Holy Grail's late reminder finally came. This time, however, it was not an electronic voice, but a force-feeding technique. The Holy Grail forcefully stuffed the entire worldview of the middle world into his brain, just like a computer downloading data. After more than an hour, Guang stood up unsteadily. When he looked up at the sky, his heart was filled with a different feeling. The land of true martial was not simple. Perhaps it was because he was laughing wildly before entering the world of the cup. He did not hold the cup properly, causing the soil in the cup to tilt. This was reflected in the world of the true martial land, which led to such a result. That was, the whole world was not a flat piece of land, but a tilted upward curve, and the tilt became more and more severe. Looking into the distance, one side of the sky was blue and white clouds, no different from the real world, but the other side of the sky was darker. Before, Chen Guang thought that it was dark clouds, but now he knew he was wrong. It was clearly because there was a huge upward slope far away from his field of vision. To be precise, it could not be called a slope, because it was the whole world that was tilted, the whole land of true martial. This world had no horizon. Chapter 903. At this time, he was at the bottom of the Rendezvous University's inclined plane. In addition, the power he obtained from using his inner strength in this world was indeed stronger than in the real world. The reason for this phenomenon was that the Rendezvous University was filled with a strange power. The natives of the Rendezvous University called it yin yang qi. In Chen Guang's philosophy, it could also be called spiritual energy. It could also be called the essence of heaven and earth when a martial artist cultivated inner strength. In short, it could be called anything. This yin-yang qi was invisible and colorless, but it really existed. Not only did it exist in the Rendezvous University, but it also existed in the real world. For example, martial artists in the real world could practice their inner strength more efficiently in a beautiful place than in a big city made of steel and concrete. Another example was the ice jade bed in the one family's secret territory. When meditating there, the inner strength would circulate more efficiently. The sects in the real world explained that these places were filled with outstanding people. It helped martial artists understand the truth of heaven and earth and understand the martial way. But in fact, it was just that the yin-yang qi in these places was more concentrated. It was just that no one could really see the essence of yin-yang in this world. No one could quantify it and give it a specific name. When martial artists meditated, the qi came from the heart and body. They refined the essence into qi, and the qi strengthened the tendons. Then they refined the qi into the spirit, and the spirit strengthened the bones. Then they refined the spirit into the void, and the skin transformed. Finally, they refined the void into the way. This was reflected in the one family martial artists entering the one zone realm, and the plain E-sect martial artists entering the plain mind realm. This yin-yang qi was the external qi that martial artists absorbed to strengthen themselves. It didn't seem to exist, but in fact, it complemented the martial artist's inner strength and was very beneficial. Yin-yang qi was not only beneficial to martial artists, but also to ordinary people. For example, ordinary people in the real world felt depressed in big cities. Their whole body was in a subhealthy state. If they went to a beautiful place for a month or two for a vacation, they would feel refreshed and full of energy. This wasn't just because they felt relieved from the burden of work, but because the air they breathed was different. As the saying went, if you're tired, you should take a breath of fresh air. You would feel much more relaxed and comfortable. In fact, this was the invisible wisdom of the ancients, which secretly combined the benefits of yin and yang qi. In short, the yin and yang qi in the land of true martial was much denser than in the real world. The Thunder Wild Demon City, where Chen Guang was located, had 8 times denser yin and yang qi than in the real world. That was why the strong executioner, who didn't practice inner strength, wasn't torn apart by Chen Guang's punch. It was precisely because he lived in the land of Rendezvous, where the yin and yang qi was extremely dense. His body had been nourished for many years, and he was far stronger than the average person on Earth. However, the Thunderclap Wild Demon City was located at the lowest level of the sloping, true martial great land. The density of yin-yang qi would only increase if one followed the endless slope upwards. The entire true martial land was divided into 9 layers. The higher one went, the denser the yin-yang qi became. The higher one went, the purer and denser the yin-yang qi would be, and the stronger the yin-yang qi would be. Apart from that, perhaps the Transcendent's Holy Grail wanted to facilitate Chen Guang's training. It had forcefully extracted a crappy martial arts ranking system from the web novels he had read in the past. Chen Guang said, "I really don't want to tell you about this unlucky ranking system. It's too shameful." Yes, that's right. From the strongest to the weakest, there were martial emperor, martial king, martial tyrant, martial revered, martial monarch, and then heroic martial artist and martial disciple. There were a total of 10 ranks for martial artists with inner strength, including the legendary martial sage, which no one had ever reached. There were a total of 11 ranks for martial artists with inner strength. Finally, there were those who didn't have any inner strength at all. They were regarded as trash who couldn't sense chi. In some places, they were called noobs or incompetent. In some places, such as the area around the Thunderclap Wild Demon City, they were called muggles. Chen Guang said, "Incompetent. F***ck your dialect." I definitely won't admit that the Heavenly Holy Grail stole these words from the Harry Potter novels that I once read. The things that scholars do can't be called stealing, it's called borrowing. Yes, that's right. In fact, Chen Guang felt that the term muggles was quite appropriate. Living in the true martial land with such dense yin-yang qi, yet unable to sense qi, how was he different from a salted fish? Since he was already a salted fish, wouldn't the term muggles be more appropriate? Chen Guang only wanted to thank the Heavenly Holy Grail for its thoughtfulness. This clear division of the 12 major ranks was very easy for him to understand. Although he still didn't know what a martial sage was, he just needed to follow this ladder and climb up step by step. Right now, he was at the beginner level of Muscle Jing, which was equivalent to a martial disciple in the true martial land. Chen Guang began to count with his fingers. By this analogy, when he reached the middle stage of Muscle Jing, he would be a standard martial artist. In terms of realms, martial emperors were probably at the level of Wenwen's great scholar realm. After that, there were emperor kings and tyrant lords. Sigh, I can't stand it anymore. Just thinking about the ratings in my mind, which were so bad that I almost couldn't stand it anymore, made me feel so awkward that my cancer was about to break out. In short, after cutting out the non-existent martial sages, the martial emperors, and the useless muggles, the remaining 9 ranks from martial emperor to martial disciple corresponded to the 3 stages of muscle jing, bone jing, and skin jing: peak, middle, and beginner. However, although the realms were the same, the actual combat strength displayed was completely different. Currently, the strength displayed by Chen Guang, who was at the lowest level, was already several times stronger than when he was on Earth. At the higher levels, where the density of yin-yang qi was higher, the inner strength contained within his body and the dense yin-yang qi nourished his body. This would increase the combat strength of a martial artist by almost equal proportions. For example, the most powerful realm of the true martial land, martial emperors, could actually cause as much destruction as the overlord-level experts in the Sea of Transient. In total, there were 9 levels of the true martial land. The highest level was divided up by the martial emperor's heavenly kingdom. Below them, there were martial emperors and other experts of various levels who had their own territories. At the lowest level of the world that Chen Guang was currently in, there were countless countries ruled by martial artists. Every country was made up of at most dozens, at least a few, and there might even be only a single city. Chen Guang's novice village, Thunder Wild Magic City, belonged to a country controlled by a martial disciple. The guy who looked like a state official on the execution platform was probably the advisor of this martial disciple. In addition, muggles without inner strength could only survive in the lowest 3 levels. It wasn't because the strong people in the upper levels rejected these weak people. It was purely because the higher they went, the denser the yin and yang qi became. After entering the 4th level, the density of the yin and yang qi exceeded the muggles' tolerance. If they tried to force their way in, they would explode and die. The true martial land was divided into 9 levels. The average density of the yin and yang qi in the lowest 3 levels was 10 times that of Earth. For example, in Thunder Wild Magic City, it was 8 times that of Earth. The next level was 10 times that of Earth, and the next level was 12 times that of Earth. However, from the 3rd level to the 4th level, the density of the yin and yang qi rose sharply. The average density of the yin and yang qi in the middle 3 levels was 100 times that of Earth. The average density of the yin and yang qi in the top 3 levels was 1,000 times that of Earth. Chen Guang didn't want to imagine how strong the people on that level would be. In the upper layer of the martial heavenly country, even a poor butcher who slaughtered pigs would be an expert in the martial king realm at the very least. Even in the lower layer, he would be considered a top-notch expert. Just like how Chen Guang could move unhindered in the thunderclap wild demonic city, he was like a crane in a flock of chickens, pretending to be an expert among dwarves. In addition, the most precious resource in the true martial land was water, rivers, and lakes. Because the water in each river flowed down from the upper levels, the water in the rivers contained even denser yin and yang qi. In the sealed, true martial land, the water in the lower levels evaporated into steam and flowed upwards. The water in the upper levels condensed into dark clouds and rain, which converged into rivers and flowed downwards. In the process of condensing steam into water, the yin and yang qi would naturally be wrapped in it. Of course, even in the lower levels, there would occasionally be rain like on Earth. Unfortunately, this was very rare. Because the water in the rivers in the lower levels have been exploited by the upper levels, and there was very little rain, the lower levels were even more arid. Unfortunately, the population base was the largest, so the people here lived in poverty and lacked yin and yang qi as a cultivation resource. The higher one went, the heavier the rain became, almost forming a waterfall. The water pressure and the yin and yang qi's spiritual pressure became heavier, so it was extremely difficult to go against the flow. It was precisely because of this extremely strange structure of the world that almost everyone born in this world wanted to continuously become stronger, go to a higher level of the country, obtain a longer lifespan, pursue greater power, and comprehend more profound martial arts realms. The desire to become stronger was engraved in the genes of the true martial lands natives. It was even more deep-rooted and intense than the instinct to carry on the family line. Even those martial emperors who had already reached the peak would not stop their footsteps and continue moving forward. This was because above the martial emperors, there was a realm that only existed in legends. Everyone knew it existed, but no one had ever reached the martial sage realm. As for how to become a martial sage, there was no quantitative standard. However, there was a place that everyone aimed to reach. It was the highest peak that stood at the top of the entire world. When people looked at it from afar, they felt that they were infinitely small and insignificant. According to legend, only a true martial sage could stand at the top of the highest peak and look down at the whole world. Only when one could see the whole world at a glance could they see through the most essential mysteries of the true martial land. Only then could they be freed from this endless cage. Unfortunately, even martial emperors could not reach the highest peak. They could not withstand the extreme yin and yang qi and pressure. If they tried to climb to the highest peak by force, they would only end up exploding and dying. For tens of thousands of years, countless skeletons had fallen at the foot of the highest peak. However, the natives of the true martial land continued to climb towards the highest peak like moths to a flame. No one knew the reason for the existence of the 100,000-foot staircase, known as the Stairway of Despair, or who had constructed it. However, since it had stood there since ancient times, it was proof of the existence of a martial saint. Only by becoming a martial sage could one transcend the shackles of this world. Yes, the true martial land was similar to the transient sea. However, it was even more cruel. Everyone in this world knew that the world they lived in was a huge cage. They were like goo in a cage. They lived in this cage where the strong preyed on the weak. Only by becoming the emperor of goo, the martial sage could one transcend. In this completely sealed plane, people were like the people in the transient sea. They could be resurrected. Moreover, everyone knew that they could be resurrected. Therefore, if it was not for the fact that they could not be defeated, almost everyone here was not afraid of death. They fought and studied with all their might just to obtain stronger martial arts and enter the upper countries. Of course, death was not without its disadvantages. Once a person died, they would be reincarnated into the lower countries. For example, a person who died in a martial emperor country would be resurrected in a martial emperor country. When they were born, they would only have the inner strength of a martial lord. Of course, there were some unlucky martial emperors who died in avalanches. They died several times and fell to the lowest countries. This was an extremely cruel resurrection pyramid structure. In addition, the total area of the true martial land was basically the same as the transient sea. However, because it was mostly land, the population of the true martial land was many times that of the transient sea. About half of the population were Muggles, while the other half were level 10 martial artists with inner strength. Without a doubt, the higher the rank, the smaller the population. Under normal circumstances, the average lifespan of the people in the true martial land was 100 years old. It was slightly longer than the people in the real world. In fact, the people in the true martial land had a spirit of heaven and earth. They cultivated their inner strength and nourished themselves with yin and yang energy. Ordinary old Muggles could live up to 200 years old. Martial artists with inner strength had a longer lifespan. Martial emperors could even live up to 1,000 years old. However, the people in this world placed too much emphasis on chivalry. There were heroes, and there were also fake heroes. They would draw their swords and kill each other if they had a disagreement. If they could fight, they would not complain. This was because everyone firmly believed that they would be a good man again after 20 years. A large number of Muggles, and even Muggles, did the same. The direct result was that the average lifespan was forcefully lowered to 100 years old. Guang shook his head and heaved a sigh of relief. He finally understood the huge worldview of this unfortunate world. Without a doubt, although the true martial land was the same size as the transient sea, there was more land. This worldview was more complete, but it was also more cruel. This huge population lived on a vast and boundless slope, achieving an extremely delicate balance. Then there was another problem. How could he become a martial sage? In the end, he still had no reference. At this moment, the heavenly Holy Grail gave him an answer. Master all the martial arts in the true martial land, and you will become a true martial sage. I really have to thank your family. This is so simple. I would rather not have known. Chapter 904. He finally knew the requirements to become a martial saint, but Guang did not feel happy at all. This was truly a grievous news that made one despair. Out of the total population of over 100 billion people, almost half of them had inner strength. Who knew how many martial arts there were? The spirit of the Holy Grail's electronic voice was precise in its choice of words. Since it had said all, it must have meant exactly what it said. All, it was all. 50 billion inner strength martial artists. Forget it. Don't think about it anymore. I'll really find a rope to strangle myself if I keep thinking about it. Even if I could live to the age of the longest-lived martial monarchs in this world, would it be impossible for me to learn all of them? This was a goal that could never be achieved from the very beginning. Okay, Lord Azure, don't you think the Holy Grail's request is too insane? Unfortunately, Azure went asleep. No matter how much he wailed in his heart, there was no response. However, perhaps the Holy Grail understood his difficulties and gave him some additional information at this time, which made him feel slightly more at ease. In the fictional true martial land, which did not exist, but had existed for tens of thousands of years, a total of over 900,000 martial monarchs had been born. Of these 900,000 martial monarchs, some were inherited by sex, and some were self-enlightened. In total, there were over 400,000 martial arts sections. in the long and seemingly frozen history of the true martial land. Although the population was extremely large, there were always all kinds of outstanding people who appeared out of nowhere and created their own martial arts. However, only the ultimate martial arts that could help one become a martial monarch with a true ultimate martial arts. Only those that could stand the test of time and leave a deep mark in the long river of history. As for the others, even the most outstanding of geniuses, if they died prematurely, they would not be able to stand closer to the peak. Their horizons would be limited, and the self-created martial arts would only be a shadow in a cup or a moon in the water. They would not be able to stand the test of time and would show various flaws after being examined. Therefore, even though the population of this world was unreasonably large and its history was unreasonably long, the true types of martial arts sects were not as terrifying as Chun Guang had imagined. According to the different attributes of inner strength techniques, they could be divided into hundreds of major sections. In a more practical sense, just like the One Clan's painting scroll used literature to enter the Tao, the plainclothes sect's pure heart technique was a Taoist method of cultivating the mind and temperament, and the fist tyrant Panda's fist sect used firm and overbearing fist techniques to stimulate the heroic spirit in one's heart to enter the Tao. Under each of the different major sects, hundreds and thousands of different variants could be branched out. In summary, there were more than 400,000 complete sections. Going further down, these more than 400,000 perfect sects would evolve into even more minuscule inner strength cultivation methods. But to that extent, basically all roads led to Rome, and no matter how many changes there were, they would not deviate from the original path. Because of this, Chun Guang only needed to learn more than 400,000 complete sects in order to master all the martial arts in the true martial land. Only by mastering all the martial arts in this world would one be qualified to obtain the title of true martial saint, which was the same name as this world. Of course, in the beginning, he might have to spend a lot of effort to specialize in one or several variations of the sects. But when his own realm reached a certain level, he could use the strengths of hundreds of sects for his own use. He would be able to understand the leopard by looking at the spot, and then he would be able to use an unorthodox method as a foundation, and then he would be able to deduce a perfect sect on his own. At that time, it might be much easier. For example, if he learned a knife technique that specialized in the butcher's knife technique, he would be able to deduce the complete soft knife technique. Chun Guang smacked his lips. It seemed that he only needed to learn 1,000,000 martial arts at most, and at least 400,000 would be enough. Not bad. Not bad, my ass. Don't talk to me. I want to be left alone, and please don't ask who I am. His heart was so stifled that he couldn't breathe. Forget it. Rather than feeling that the road was difficult, it was better to set off immediately. Since he had already come, there was no other choice. He had to go even if he had to. As Chun Guang raised his leg and ran towards the thunderclap wild demon city, he began to ponder in his heart. The people he had met before were all muggles. They had no inner strength at all and were not worth mentioning. However, according to the setting of the world provided by the Holy Grail, the martial arts in this world had already matured to the point that it made one's hair stand on end. It was too easy for people in this world to obtain secret martial arts manuals. Perhaps it would be a little difficult to obtain the 400,000 complete sects that could be cultivated to the martial monarch realm, but if one went further down, the branches and variations that could be cultivated to the martial monarch realm, martial king realm, or even martial overlord realm, if one were to calculate the exponential growth rate, the number would really be too much to look at. Because there were too many choices, it was very possible that any random person with inner strength would be able to execute a high-end technique that had been tested by history for a long time. For example, a martial disciple who could become a city lord in the first layer of the country could only become a captain of the soldiers in the second layer ruled by the chivalrous. In the third layer ruled by the chivalrous, perhaps they could only set up a fruit stall on the street and even cut pineapples with the amazingly profound and powerful blood azure saber technique. As for the fourth layer ruled by the martial monarch, martial disciples could not go there. Once they did, they would explode on the spot. Therefore, he could not underestimate the enemy. As for what he should do, how he should operate to climb up layer by layer, and finally step on the heads of all the martial monarchs, master all the martial arts, and become a martial saint, Qin Guang had a complete set of plans in mind. He would first focus on cultivating the painting scroll. Judging by Wenwen's literary grandmaster realm, the painting scroll was undoubtedly a high-end technique that could be cultivated to the martial monarch realm. When he became stronger, for example, after he became a martial artist, he would go back and bully martial disciples. Young man, I see that you have a lot of potential. Hand over the martial arts, and I will bring you along to show off and fly. What? You don't agree? Then let's go to the small forest next door and talk about life. When you feel my strong charisma, not to mention your martial arts, you will even want to introduce your wife to me. Yes, that's right, I want to snatch. Perhaps some people would say that he wanted to challenge someone of a higher level. Master Guang thought, what did you say? The wind is too strong. I can't hear you clearly. Although his physical body still held an advantage, and he also had an extremely strong regenerative ability, which gave him the foundation to challenge those of a higher realm, but who would seek abuse for no reason. Wouldn't it be better to comfortably bully those who were weaker than him? Must he go against his own life? I am not stupid. If he did not bully the weak, did not rely on robbing to obtain the secret manual, and used love to reform the world, and waited for others to come to him, who knows how long it would take to cultivate? Who knows if he used up all his 100 chances of revival by dying of old age every time, he might not be able to succeed. Speaking of which, he did have a piece of good news. That was, every time he accidentally died and revived, the martial arts and realm he grasped would not drop. Qin Guang had a wicked thought. When he becomes a martial monarch, should he purposely commit suicide and come back to the Thunderclap Wild Demon City to take a look at the novice village? Wouldn't that scare a whole city of people to death? All right, no matter what, this time, there seems to be more time and space than when I was in the Transient Sea. My situation is also much better than when I was in the Transient Sea. I definitely cannot repeat the mistakes of the first time I went to the Transient Sea. I want to go on a killing spree. That's right, this is my world. In the entire true martial land, there are hundreds of billions of people. There are at least 5 billion beauties who can cause the downfall of a city, right? They are all mine. Liuli did not deceive me. She said that there would be hundreds of billions of cute girls, and there really are countless cute girls. Hundreds of billions is a bit too much. After all, I have not transformed into tentacles yet, so I'm unable to communicate with so many girls at the same time. But it doesn't matter, 5 billion is already enough. The old man's pile driver has been thirsty for countless years. It is time to let it out. In any case, I already have the identity of the perverted flower thief. If I don't do something, I will be letting down the old man's invincible pile driver. It is time to take it out and go on a killing spree. Lord Guang felt like he was about to fly when he thought about how there were 5 billion cute girls waiting for his love in the true martial great land. He felt like he was floating as he walked, and he felt like he was about to fly. My life has been worth it. He closed his eyes, opened his arms, and ran on the broad road to the Thunderclap Wild Demon City, his mind wandering in infinite reverie. If Liuli was still awake and could monitor him at any time, Qin Guang would definitely not dare to be so insolent and arrogant. But now that Liuli has fallen asleep, as the saying goes, the sky is high, the emperor is far away, and the sea is wide. If he does not take this opportunity to do something, his conscience will blame him. He tiptoed on the ground again, jumped 3 feet high, spread his limbs, and glided forward in the air, looking particularly happy. This is the so-called extreme joy begets sorrow. Facts have proven that one cannot be too pretentious. Floating in the air with his eyes closed, Qin Guang originally planned to open his eyes when he landed, but after waiting for a long time, he still had not landed. The wind blowing on his face was getting stronger and stronger. He opened his eyes. If I remember correctly, when I ran from here, it was a plane? Why is there a cliff here when I return the way I came? He lowered his head and looked down. His mind was filled with confusion. How high is this cliff? Chen Guang didn't want to describe it in detail. In short, looking down made him, who originally did not have a fear of heights, suffer from intermittent acrophobia. He thought of another joke. There was a young man who was extremely rich. One day, he accidentally fell from the headquarters of his father's company, but he didn't fall to his death. Instead, he starved to death in midair. Just based on the height of the cliff below, Chen Guang felt that it was possible. This doesn't make sense. The true martial land exists for me. In this world, I am the chosen one with the halo of a protagonist. There is no reason for me to fall to my death from a cliff for no reason. Wait, what is this? This seems to be a very familiar routine. A martial arts world that cultivates inner strength, the halo of a protagonist, falling off a cliff. All three elements of a fortuitous encounter are present. According to such a cliché routine, even though the cliff is so high that it makes people's hair stand on end, I definitely won't fall to my death. Not only will I not fall to my death, but there will also be a hidden master at the bottom of the cliff waiting to pass on his skills to me. Otherwise, there will be a peerless secret manual waiting for me, or there will be a sword tomb or something like that. At the very least, there will be a big eagle, right? If this is the case, Chen Guang doesn't know whether he should be happy or sad. Cliché. Unbearably cliché. How can my life be so cliché? How can I go out and greet people in the future? Chapter 905. First, it came up with the cliched 12 levels of martial arts, and then it came up with the 3 elements of a miracle encounter. Was there something wrong with the heavenly Holy Grail, or was there something wrong with his worldview, which helped the Holy Grail construct the land of Zhenwu? Could it be that I'm not creative at all? Did he have to use such a cliched method? Forget it. He would rather die once than to use such a cliched method. He would just resurrect and return to the city. It was a waste of a life. Falling off a cliff was too embarrassing. Screech. Just as he was thinking about this, he heard a shrill cry of a bird. Chen Guang turned his head and looked down. His eyes widened. This guy was not a condor. This guy was definitely not a condor. Looking at the black-feathered bird with a wingspan of 4 meters, Chen Guang covered his face in pain. It really was Brother Condor. Bang! Brother Condor was smashed to death by me. Unexpectedly, the condor did not come to save Chen Guang. Instead, it spread its wings and stretched out its claws to catch him from below. However, it did not aim properly and was smashed to death by Chen Guang on the back. Chen Guang held his waist in pain. Brother Condor had died miserably. His waist was also badly hit. He turned his head and looked at the dead condor that was falling with him. Brother, what a coincidence. Falling off a cliff? Let's go together. Forget it. I'll just die. It's already bad enough that my right wrist was broken. I really don't want to be saved by another condor and become the great condor hero. However, he was not fated to die. He continued to fall, but after falling for an unknown period of time, a dark shadow flew over from afar. Chen Guang looked at the condor corpse that was still falling with him. Yes, it was this guy that was falling and spilling blood in midair. This time, it was not Brother Condor flying over, but the Condor Legion. Speaking of which, they were a little close to the ground. Bang, bang, bang. Like setting off firecrackers, Chen Guang was still in a daze when he was slammed into a large lake by several condors. He struggled out of the water, shook his hair, and shook off the blood and flesh of the family of condors. He climbed ashore in embarrassment, sighed, and said to himself, "In the end, I didn't die. I still survived after falling off the cliff." Following that, a white-haired old man in ragged clothes with a pair of bright eyes would jump out and point at him. "Who are you?" "I'm Martial Emperor Dugu, Feng Qingyang. Hurry up and become my disciple." Sigh. "Forget it. I'll just resign myself to fate. This is the fate of those who possess the protagonist's halo. I can't avoid it. I only have 100 lives in total. I should use them wisely and not kill myself to return to the city. The durability of my equipment will also drop." Cough, cough. He rested in the water for about 5 to 6 minutes, and even when he climbed up to the shore, Feng Qingyang did not jump out. Then, Chen Guang started to look for a cave, but he couldn't find one. When he was sure that there were no hidden secret manuals or living experts here, he began to feel disappointed again. He had fallen off the cliff for nothing, and he had implicated Brother Condor's family. What a miserable death. There was a large valley at the bottom of the cliff. Guang did not know how long the valley was, but it was at least a few kilometers wide. From afar, he could see that the other side of the valley was also a huge cliff. Well, he had to find a way to climb up to the Thunderclap Devil City. Just as he was about to walk towards the cliff, Guang's stomach growled. He calculated the time. He had been in the true martial arts land for a few hours, and it was time to eat. Therefore, he ran back to the lake where he fell off the cliff, picked up an eagle, plucked its feathers, and set up a pole. Drilling wood to make a fire was not a problem for him, as he had written the entire book starting from zero with brass fireworks. After setting up the pole, he prepared to pick up some dry wood nearby to start fire. He would just have barbecued meat for this meal. Although there was no seasoning or cumin, survival in the wild was not that important. However, as the saying went, you can wear out iron shoes in fruitless searching, but you will find it by chance. He found a lot of dry wood, but he also found some things that he did not want to see, but were destined to appear. I still can't hide from it. Looking at the thing in front of him that looked like dry firewood, but was clearly some unlucky fellow's calf, Lord Guang couldn't help but sigh. That's right, I have the protagonist halo, so I have to walk on the true martial arts land on my own, okay? I admit it. At this moment, Guang had no idea that when Azure fell asleep and no one bothered about him, the Shenhuang God Emperor was still awake. Although she could not talk to Guang, who was in the true martial arts land, she could make use of her fusion with the Holy Grail to do some tricks in this world. Lu Mingguo was looking at the void with a sinister smile. Humph. Who asked you to be so cocky? I'll let you have 5 billion cute girls. An extremely sinister sneer reverberated throughout the entire Cloud City. Even a sleeping Li felt goosebumps. Since he found the bones, it meant that there were goods nearby. Hence, Guang immediately started searching the surroundings with all his might. He searched for a long time, but did not find any secret manuals, weapons, or even a piece of cloth. It must have been too old and been decomposed by microorganisms. However, this showed that the owner of the dry bones was very powerful. At least the bones were preserved in good condition. Guang searched everywhere, but in the end he only found a lot of scattered bones in 2s and 3s. He was getting hungrier and hungrier. He could not help but feel disheartened. He first went back to eat the white roasted chicken wings, then returned to search for another 2 or 3 hours, but still found nothing. Is this unlucky Holy Grail trying to torture me to death? First it made me fall off a cliff, but it didn't make me die. It was not easy for me to accept such a crappy fortuitous encounter setting, but there was nothing after I came down. Just as I was about to give up on the fortuitous encounter and continue on to the Thunderclap Wild Demon City, you put a strong dry bone in front of me, which rekindled my confidence. Now I've searched for half a day, but there's nothing. The ups and downs of life are too violent. There are too many ups and downs in a day. It's too stiff. My heart is so tired. Can't you just give me a clean answer? Unfortunately, the Holy Grail did not care about his nagging this time. Guang decided to accept his fate. It seemed that he had the fate of a main character who fell off a cliff without any fortuitous encounter. He decided to give up. He randomly found a clean and shiny stone nearby. He decided to pee and leave this sad place. Unexpectedly, as soon as he peed, the stone began to faintly appear on it. Shit, there really is a peerless secret manual. It's not on the cliff, it's on the stone. To be honest, if this unlucky Holy Grail really came up with such a crappy setting, I would be ashamed to say it out loud, okay? Fortunately, I'm not a web novelist like Banyangzi. If I didn't come up with such a deceptive setting, I would definitely die. Guang cursed in his heart as he looked down at the stone. The Holy Grail might be slacking off, because the words on the stone were in standard Microsoft Black, simplified Chinese characters. Guang thought that if he lived in a time travel novel, he would definitely be ridiculed by countless readers for such a low-class setting. Forget it. Thinking carefully about the peerless secret manual that came out of peeing, it didn't seem to have any style. This senior's tricks were a bit deep. Others would kowtow to trigger the hidden condition to drop a secret manual. But here, it was peeing. I am a child-faced martial emperor. I died 8 times due to bad luck, and fell from the martial emperor realm to this day. If it weren't for my lover, the stone maiden, who stayed by my side in every life, I would have fallen into endless reincarnation. Although I've recovered my memory, I've become a muggle and can't practice martial arts. It's heaven's will to kill me. My 8 great protectors abandoned me and wanted to steal my divine kung fu. The stone maiden died on the battlefield to protect me when I escaped. I died with my eyes wide open. After this reincarnation, no one will help me recover the memory of my previous life. I don't know if I can break away from the shackles of being a muggle in my next life. How sad. How sad. Now, I've left my lifetime's secret mnemonic chant on this wall. If the person who falls down is fated to survive a great calamity and is met with rain, it can be seen that he is a person with great fortune. He will be able to see my divine technique and receive my inheritance. This technique of mine can be said to be the easiest technique to practice in the land of true martial. It is also the fastest and has the most stable foundation. If the inheritor of this technique is fated, he will soar into the sky. After you become a martial emperor, please avenge my lover, the lady in the stone, and kill the 8 martial emperors. Chen Guang read this line of words without missing a word. He was speechless for a long time. Misunderstanding. Senior, I misunderstood you. I thought you had a wild way of doing things, but it turns out that I was just a blind cat running into a dead mouse. Rain had a special meaning in the land of martial arts. It was a standard auspicious sign. Every time it rained, it meant that the suffering people could finally enjoy the nourishment of the abundant yin and yang energy. The martial emperor, named Child-Faced, had set the condition for the secret manual to be dropped as rain. It was reasonable and understandable. However, when it was his turn, he changed it awkwardly. In Chen Guang's opinion, the old man was a person with the halo of the main character, so he would be the main character in the cup world in his backyard. He had to have the same luck as the marquee champion, so he could pick up the divine kung fu even when he peed. After a while, the other side of the smooth stone started to be covered with densely packed small characters. Chen Guang didn't dare to be negligent. He read it word by word with full concentration. It was indeed a top-notch martial art of the martial emperor level. The mental cultivation method had more than 7,000 or 8,000 words, and every word was profound and profound. He would benefit a lot if he read it carefully. The full text of the manual was as follows. 8,000 words were omitted below. All in all, he had mastered it one day later. The child-faced martial emperor didn't lie. It was really easy to practice. After reading it a few times and comprehending the contents of the entire cultivation method, he tried to circulate his inner energy according to the unique technique of the child-faced martial emperor and visualize his qi. The qi was generated invisibly in his dantian, and it was so easy that it was unreasonable. Sensing the perfect combination of the unique technique of the child-faced martial emperor in his dantian and the inner energy of the painting manual, Chen Guang felt that it was too easy to be real. He tried to accumulate this new inner strength in his body, and then condensed it in his palm. In an instant, his palm became scorching hot, as if an extremely strong yang qi was about to erupt. It was very strong. As soon as he mastered this new cultivation method, his cultivation state seemed to catch up with the painting manual that he had practiced for a long time. He muttered to himself, "It's strange. According to Xian and Wenwen, it's impossible for my comprehension ability to be so high even though my root bone is unprecedented. It's like a dream." He had a bad premonition, but he didn't know what the problem was. Forget it. Since the unique technique of the child-faced martial emperor was a perfect martial emperor sect, he would learn it sooner or later. It was not a big deal. Just as he was comforting himself like this, the writing on the rock changed on its own without a sound. It seemed that the child-faced martial emperor had done something to this rock. Only when the energy of this unique technique was sensed would the hidden words appear. Congratulations on cultivating the child-faced divine method. This was the first line of words that appeared. Chen Guang widened his eyes. Damn it. That was to say, this guy hadn't mentioned the name of this unique technique from the beginning to the end. As the name suggested, the word divine in the middle could be removed. This was the child-faced divine method. Now that you have mastered the unique technique of my lifetime, I have to remind you that you must be a virgin to learn this technique, and you can't lose your virginity after practicing it. Otherwise, your body will explode and you will die. As to how far you can lose your virginity, don't ask me. I don't know. My wife and I have been widows all our lives, and my wife is also a woman made of stone. This guy had finally revealed his foxtail. He had called her his lover, the woman in the stone, in a genteel manner a moment ago, but now he called her his wife. You're really wicked, you old pervert. Besides, it turned out that the woman in the stone was the woman made of stone. The woman made of stone and the highly achieved child-faced divine method were a match made in heaven. But I'm being wronged. I'm not a virgin. Wait a minute. Chen Guang suddenly realized that his physical body should have been reconstructed in the state of a spiritual body when he entered the realm in the cup. In a sense, he was still a new infant in the Jinwu land. Please allow me to show a sorrowful expression. That's why it's so easy to learn, and why it's so masculine and domineering, and why it's so fast to advance in the cultivation state. It's the child-faced divine method. How could it not be reliable after paying such a high price? Tong Yin had already become the martial emperor, but he still couldn't lose his virginity. It meant that this unlucky child-faced divine method would be a bottomless path of no return once he started cultivating it. This was a poison that could penetrate the intestines. Chen Guang's mournful wailing echoed in the whole valley. Nobody could understand his sorrow. If he had known this method was so complicated, he wouldn't have learned it right now. He would have held it in his hands for now and learned all the other methods, such as the acacia method and the double cultivation method. He would have learned the child-faced divine method when he was only one step away from mastering it. Wait, have I learned the child-faced divine method? What if I encounter the double cultivation method in the future? What if I encounter the mirror of the sunflower again? Pooh, pooh. This kind of self-destructive deviant method would never be able to become the martial emperor. Chen Guang shook his head to get rid of this dreadful thought. But soon, he felt melancholy again. What should he do with the Fairy Heart Sutra? What should he do with the merciful boat sword code? Until the next morning, when he climbed the other side of the cliff, these 100,000 questions were still deeply troubling him. In the depths of his heart, there was a touch of sadness that he could not get rid of. Chapter 906. 2 days later, the vile Valley's flower thief, Chen Guang, who had escaped from the execution ground, returned, causing a commotion in the thunderclap demonic city. However, the news that he had become a martial disciple had long been known to the whole city, so no one dared to stop him. Chen Guang followed the principle of saving time. Anyway, this was a world where the strong preyed on the weak. Anyway, people in this world would not really die, so he did not intend to hold back. He did not want to waste his precious time, so he went straight to the city lord's mansion. There were more than 400,000 martial arts waiting for him. He did not have the time and energy to slowly talk about life with you. How dare you? I was not in the city 2 days ago, but you were lucky enough to escape. How dare you come back? What's wrong? Could it be that you want to take revenge for your vile valley friends? A burly man wearing golden armor and holding a long saber stood at the entrance of the city lord's mansion. He looked down at Chen Guang below and said sternly, "This big man was the city lord of the thunder-mad demon city, the only martial disciple within a radius of dozens of miles. The fat governor, who Chen Guang had met 2 days ago, was standing behind the city lord. He said in a low voice, 'Sir, don't underestimate him. This Chen Guang showed real martial disciple methods that day. He is very strong.' As for Chen Guang, he raised his head and looked at the man. However, he was pondering whether to kill or not. Both of them were martial disciples who had just entered the muscle strength realm. He had a perfect body and the recovery ability of a great Earth explosion. Moreover, he had the two martial emperors' unique arts, the painting scroll and the virgin boy divine skill. No matter how he looked at it, the difficulty of killing him should not be more difficult than killing an ant. Although this man was within the scope of his robbery, there was no enmity between them. He felt a little sorry for taking his life for no reason. Just as he was thinking this, the man saw that Chen Guang did not answer and felt that he was looking down on him. He immediately said angrily, "Bring me the heads of his accomplices in the vile valley. Let him know how powerful I am. You're just a rookie martial disciple who has just comprehended inner strength by chance. I, the Thunderclap Wild Magic Saber, have been immersed in martial arts for many years. My foundation is solid and you can't be compared to me. I only need 3 strikes to kill you." Chen Guang's pupil shrank. "If you hadn't mentioned it, I would have forgotten about it. My gay friends that I have never met in Evil Men Valley, you have all died a miserable death." With this thought in mind, his heart immediately felt at ease. Chen Guang put his hands on his hips. "All right, I won't make fun of your shameless name. How could you have such a big face?" A broken martial disciple actually had such a shameless name and even named the entire city after you. Why don't you go to heaven? Why don't you call yourself the God-slaying saber demon? The countless busybodies surrounding the city lord's mansion were speechless. Didn't they say that they wouldn't complain? You're going to ridicule him to the heavens, okay? And what kind of new dialect is this? Does it mean ridicule? Needless to say, these muggles were just here to watch the show. The worldview of the people in this world was so clear. Whoever had the bigger fist would have the final say. Regardless of what kind of character the flower thief Chen Guang was in the past, if the two of them fought today and he won, at least before the next martial artist who ruled the 10 cities came to collect taxes, as long as Chen Guang was interested, the new city lord of the Thunderclap Wild Demon City would be him. The strong man named Thunderclap Wild Magic Saber was scolded by Chen Guang, but he didn't feel embarrassed at all. What a joke. In the whole land of Jinwu, every martial disciple has his own overbearing title. Otherwise, how can they show their ambition? The city lord of the neighboring city is also called the martial god of 10 lands and 8 wilderness. Chen Guang was dumbfounded. There was actually a day when he felt ashamed of his inferiority when it came to shamelessness. Well, cut the crap. Seeing that you are also a martial disciple, as long as you are willing to pay the water tax, I can spare your life. Huh? Water tax? Of course. The water in this area of the Thunderclap Wild Magic City belongs to me. Of course I have to pay the tax. Why don't you collect the breathing tax? Why don't you collect the congestion tax when you walk? Chen Guang couldn't help but tease him. Unexpectedly, the self-titled Thunderclap Berserk Demon Saber was shocked. That's reasonable and convincing. He quickly turned his head and said, "Master, go and tidy up the documents now. If there's a trend of people passing by on the street, everyone will be charged the congestion tax. If tomorrow is foggy, there must be too many people breathing, so we will also collect the breathing tax." The fat man who looked like a state official, but was actually the master, wondered, "Master, isn't it because the roads in our city have not been widened for 70 or 80 years? Shut up. I said to collect taxes, and I will collect taxes. Well, Chen Guang, you either give me 10 years of hard work or 20 years of hard work. Then you will pay the water tax and congestion tax, and I will spare your life. Or do you have women in your family? Or food is also fine. In short, no matter what, make a living in the territory of the Thunderclap Wild Magic Saber. I have the final say here, and I will only need 3 slashes to kill you." This guy had now begun to collect the congestion tax, and the onlookers near the city lord's mansion instantly dispersed. Chen Guang saw that he had already entered the state of governance with a few words, and he couldn't help but complain. As a knowledgeable modern person, he was indeed many levels ahead of the people in the land of true martial arts. Cut the crap. If you have the guts, then come at me. I want to see how you will kill me with 3 slashes. This guy was always yelling about 3 slashes. Although it was annoying to listen to, and he wanted to slap him to death, Chen Guang was not as blindly confident as he looked on the surface. Instead, he took advantage of the time when he was about to fly up to the sky and directly made his move. As a good young man who had been deeply affected by the modern dark arts, he didn't know how many times he had seen negative examples of people who failed to show off and were struck by lightning in online novels. He was here to rob martial arts, and he must not repeat the mistakes of others. In the next moment, Chen Guang rushed in front of the Thunderclap Wild Magic Saber, and without any fancy tricks, he raised his hand and gave a heavy punch to the head. The Thunderclap Wild Magic Saber laughed loudly. "Come at me." He raised a long saber in his hand and slashed at Chen Guang from below. Then he flew out. It was like when Chen Guang had not yet had internal strength, and before he participated in the World Arm Wrestling competition in the United States with those professional boxers to test the strength of their fists. Although the two of them were completely disproportionate in size and were in the same realm, the strength of the two sides was completely different. With Chen Guang's current actual combat strength, it was already bullying to challenge someone one level higher than him. Fighting someone of the same level was simply cheating. Although the opponent's saber technique, called the Thunderclap Wild Magic Saber, was exquisite enough, it was useless, and he was completely crushed in strength. Congratulations to the new City Lord. The fat advisor only hesitated for 3 seconds, then raised his arms and shouted. Old Master Guang sent him flying with a kick. Scram! It was already kind enough not to kill this guy. From then on, the Thunderclap Wild Magic City was officially renamed the True Martial Holy Emperor City. There was no other way. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. I can't be a maverick. I have to keep up with the trend of the true martial land. Since everyone is shameless, I will name myself after this world and call myself the True Martial Holy Emperor. I feel that it will show my great ambition. After killing the former city lord with one punch, Chen Guang immediately stayed here. He used 3 days to rebuild the entire management system of the True Martial Holy Emperor City. His principle for choosing people was very simple: those who were not as handsome as him. Since ancient times, handsome people were either hidden protagonists or despicable villains, and they had to be guarded against. In addition, Chen Guang directly dismissed the former city lord's huge harem, so he didn't have to worry about it. For the next year, he did nothing else. On one hand, he peacefully meditated in the city lord's mansion, and on the other hand, he let his new team collect all kinds of martial arts in the True Martial Holy Emperor City. High-end, mid-end, and low-end martial arts were all found, and he didn't reject anyone. On the other hand, Chen Guang made another discovery. Compared to when one, his strength lay in his innate talent, not his perception. However, in the land of true martial, perhaps the spirit of the Holy Grail had given him a special cheat. No matter what he learned, he could learn extremely quickly. Although it wasn't as exaggerated as when he learned the falling into the pit technique, he could basically master a martial art in 3 to 5 days, 10 to 15 days at most. It was a pity that the True Martial Holy Emperor City was located in the lowest level of the world, a remote and desolate place. In this dozens of miles, apart from the falling into the pit technique, he couldn't find another perfect martial emperor level martial art. However, he wasn't in a hurry. There was no point in being anxious. In the early days of business, he had no choice. While he had his own Sharingan, he learned whatever he could and accumulated more knowledge. In the future, when he encountered those profound martial emperor level martial arts, it would be easier to figure out the way. Time flew, and in the blink of an eye, a year had passed. On this day, all the households in the True Martial Holy Emperor City were decorated with lanterns and streamers, and there was a festive and peaceful atmosphere. Today was the first anniversary of their city lord entering the city, and it was also the day that their genius city lord surpassed the martial disciple stage and became a martial artist. As for the city lord's disgraceful past as a rapist, to borrow his own words, "Who cared?" No one cared, and he seemed to have changed. Now, not only did he not pick flowers, but he even treated women like snakes and scorpions. Beautiful women even avoided him. No wonder the city lord could suddenly become a martial disciple. No wonder he could punch that unlucky guy to death when he just advanced. It must be the soul of a strong man from a few lifetimes ago that had awakened. Under the rule of the wise and benevolent new city lord, the agriculture and commerce of the Holy Emperor's city flourished, and the people lived and worked in peace. According to the city lord, in this year, the whole city's chicken skin had increased by a full 30%. Chun Guang sat happily on the main seat in the hall of the city lord's mansion. Looking at the group of officials who were not as handsome as him, he couldn't help but recall the happy days when he was a sage and a prophet in the Sea of Su. In the years since he came to this world, except for the accidental death at the beginning, it had been smooth sailing until now. Using a year's time to advance from the beginner stage of muscle jing to the middle stage was not particularly fast, but this was because he had spent a lot of time and energy on studying all kinds of unorthodox martial arts. It had only been a year, and with the help of the 8 times yin-yang energy, he had successfully leveled up. What made him even happier was that in this small city of more than 100,000 people, there were dozens of different kinds of low-end martial arts that had been lost to the outside world. Chun Guang thought that since he had already graduated from the novice village, it was about time to change the map. At daybreak, we'll set off for the rundown city that's about 200 li away from here. The city is ruled by the self-proclaimed emperor of this region. How about that? Everyone, it is fate that brought us to know each other. Thank you for your help this year. Come, let's have a toast. Chun Guang raised his cup and said, with the blessing of the Holy Emperor, the people of our true martial Holy Emperor city are blessed. Yes, I heard that many homeless people in the nearby cities have the intention to move their families here. Now that the Holy Emperor has become a martial artist, the rise of our Holy Emperor city is just around the corner. The old advisor that Chun Guang had recruited, Bao Bo, stood up and said with a smile, "Sir, I have something to say." That's right. There was only one reason why Chun Guang recruited him. His name was Bao Bo, which reminded him of his poor little Bob who was stranded in the sea of fleeting time. Go ahead, old Bao. 1 year ago today was the day that the Holy Emperor's city rose from the ashes. It was also the day that the Holy Emperor's city was blessed. I suggest that we make today a festival and celebrate it every year in the future. What do you think? Although he had to leave tomorrow, Chun Guang felt that Bao Bo's idea was not bad. When he became stronger in the future, he could make a festival of his own. It would help spread his glory throughout the true martial great land and help him gain faith. That's a good idea. Old Bao, what do you think we should call this festival? Old Bao rolled his eyes. The Holy Emperor is the true martial Holy Emperor. Today is the day that the Holy Emperor rose from the ashes. Why don't we call it Christmas? Chun Guang was dumbfounded. Old Bao, you're really King talented. The matter of Christmas was settled, and the banquet was lively and noisy. However, at the most lively time, a guard who looked like Baliang Jin rushed in with a panicked expression. Holy Emperor, bad news. Bad news. Chun Guang frowned. What's the matter? The guard said breathlessly, just now, the guard at the city gate reported that there's a long snake-like fire approaching from afar. If there's no accident, it might be the 10 martial emperors coming to collect taxes. The 10 martial emperors mentioned by the guard were the martial artists who ruled the 10 cities, including the true martial Holy Emperor city. Chun Guang glared at him. If they want to collect taxes, then so be it. What's the big deal? Is there a need to be so flustered? Don't embarrass me. Holy Emperor, you don't know. It's not that simple to collect taxes. At this time, old Bao, who was half drunk, had completely sobered up. His face was pale, and he was more afraid than the guard. Chun Guang put down the cup. What's the matter? Old Bao, tell me. Old Bao seemed to suddenly recall some unpleasant memories. Usually, the 10 martial emperors collect taxes once every 10 years. It seems not frequent, but every time they collect taxes, they scrape 3 feet off the ground. All the women of the families who have just opened their mouths will be taken away, and those who have a little surplus will not have a grain of rice left. This time, I don't know why the 10 martial emperors came 2 years in advance. Before the Holy Emperor came to this city, I was like a beggar, but 8 years ago I was also a prominent family in this city. But on the day of collecting taxes, all my belongings, my poor 17 daughters, the youngest of whom is only 12 years old, were taken away. If there is no accident, my daughters should have turned into bones by now, right? Chun Guang smashed the table in front of him with a punch, and his hair stood up in anger. Is there such a thing? Old Bao, I will avenge you and cut him into 17 pieces. Every time I burn a piece, I will help you pay tribute to one of your daughters. Lord, you can't. You have just become a martial artist. You can't be a match for the 10 martial emperors who have been immersed in martial arts for more than 100 years. What a joke. Your master, I am invincible within 3 levels. Chun Guang shook his robe, and his killing intent overflowed as he walked out majestically. Chapter 907. How dare you? How dare you kill my brothers and sisters? Come out and die. Before Qin Guang could reach the city gate, a roar resounded from the outside. It's the voice of the 10 Directions' martial emperor. Sure enough, he came in person. Old Bao, who was beside Qin Guang, shrunk his neck back when he heard this. His face was full of fear. Didn't you say that he came to collect taxes? Does he want to avenge the thunder-mad demon saber? Are they on good terms? Qin Guang didn't care about Old Bao's fear. Only he knew that he wasn't bragging. He was just stating the truth. Old Bao's footsteps became slower and slower. My lord, it's not like that. The relationship between the 10 Directions' martial emperor and the thunderclap mad devil saber isn't that good. He's probably just looking for an excuse to get angry so that he can deal a heavy blow today. It's not good. Maybe he wants to kill the goose that lays the golden eggs this time. Fortunately, my lord doesn't have a woman. Qin Guang almost couldn't help but kick Bao Bo. What the hell was he talking about? Old Bao, have you heard of saying? Bao Bo was confused. What? Coward. Bao Bo didn't understand. What does that mean? Qin Guang snorted. It means that if a person is too cowardly, he won't have a future for the rest of his life. Do you understand? Lord Saint Emperor is right. Bao Bo nodded and quickly took out a small notebook. Christmas Day of the Saint Emperor era. On the night, the Saint Emperor said, this was why Chun Guang admired Bao Bo. Bao Bo's bootlicking skills were top-notch, and he was practically the same as Little Bob in the Transient Ocean. However, when the two of them approached the city gate, Old Bao became terrified again. Lord Sage Emperor, although I know that you are talented, just like how you easily defeated the Thunderclap Berserk Demon Blade not long after you became a martial disciple, not every martial master in our world can rule over 10 cities. The martial emperor of the 10 Directions is one of the top martial masters in the entire first layer. Shut up, Bao Bo. If you keep being a coward, I'll beat you up. Qin Guang lifted his leg and walked forward without looking back. In the huge, true martial Saint Emperor city, there was no longer any festive atmosphere. All the houses that were decorated with lanterns had quietly removed the lanterns in front of their doors and were desperately hiding things in their cellars. Although everyone had a powerful city lord who was also a martial artist, just like Old Bao, no one thought that the Holy Emperor was a match for the martial emperor of the 10 Directions. On this side, just as Qin Guang was about to open the door, the huge Ironwood City gate was blasted open with a loud bang and fell to the ground. With his hands clasped behind his back, Qin Guang stood at the city gate and looked forward. Under the night sky, there was a long snake formation formed by a row of torches. The man walking at the front was wearing a purple gold crown and a black feather robe. He must be the legendary 10 Directions martial emperor. My lord, this is Old Bao followed behind Qin Guang, trembling with fear. When he spoke, his legs were trembling. Qin Guang knew that he had a shadow in his heart, so he didn't bother to teach him anymore. Instead, he raised his head and looked at the martial emperor of the 10 Directions with a smile. I plan to go to the next city first, and then go to your 10 Directions city to find you in a few years. I didn't expect that you would come first. Before the martial emperor of the 10 Directions could say anything, a dark, thin, short man jumped out and said coldly, How dare you not kneel in front of the martial emperor? How dare you talk nonsense? Chen Guang finally couldn't help laughing out loud. Did I hear it right? Martial emperor? You're just a martial artist. How dare you call yourself a martial emperor? Aren't you more arrogant? You have already called yourself an emperor. Stop talking nonsense and kneel down. Seeing that Chen Guang dared to mock the martial emperor of the 10 directions, the dark, thin, short man shouted angrily and flashed forward to kill him. As soon as he made his move, chi surged around him. He was a senior martial disciple. Chen Guang didn't hesitate either. He raised his palm lightly and used the floating cloud palm, a martial venerable level technique he had just learned 2 days ago. He fanned out with the back of his hand. It seemed to be a light move, but it was actually heavy. It seemed to be a slow move, but it was actually as fast as lightning. Before the dark, thin, short man's sharp claws could grab Chen Guang's shoulder, he was hit in the face by Chen Guang's floating cloud palm. It wasn't that he didn't see it. He also wanted to dodge, but his whole brain seemed to be frozen at that moment. He had clearly seen it with his eyes, and his mind was screaming that something was wrong, but his body couldn't react in time to dodge. The man let out a mournful wail as he flew sideways and crashed into the notice board next to the city gate. His legs gave way, and he died without any hesitation. The pupils of the martial emperor of the 10 directions, who was sitting calmly on the fishing platform and watching the show, shrank slightly. What? You're already a martial artist? Chen Guang shook his wrist. The floating cloud palm, which seemed gentle but was actually fierce, was very compatible with his current masculine and domineering inner strength. That's right. And then? You specially came to find trouble with me, but you didn't inquire about the information clearly. You're very confident. As he spoke, Chen Guang thought to himself, if he decisively admitted defeat, should I consider letting him go? Seeing that he didn't deny it, the martial emperor of the 10 directions was not afraid at all. He just sneered and said, "Good. Very good. In just a year, you've been promoted from a martial disciple to a martial artist. In the entire first layer, you can probably be considered a rare, peerless genius." Chen Guang gave him a thumbs up and said, "Good eyesight. Thank you for your praise." Humph. Do you think I'm really praising you? Do you think that in the past 100 years, no other genius has appeared under the rule of my martial emperor of the 10 directions? But why has no one been able to shake my position? Do you understand? It's because most of the so-called geniuses are like you. As soon as they have a little momentum, they don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. They think they're invincible and don't know how to restrain themselves. And I, the martial emperor of the 10 directions, love to strangle geniuses like you in the cradle. Go to hell. As soon as the martial emperor of the 10 directions finished speaking, he suddenly took out a long sword from behind him and straightened his body to stab forward. Take my killing sword of the 10 directions. I only need one sword to kill you. It was a familiar line again. His sword seemed ordinary, but in fact, it contained a strange murderous aura. It made the hair of the person who was targeted stand on end, and he had a feeling that he had no way to escape and would definitely die. Not only was Chen Guang not surprised, but he was also overjoyed. He thought that he would have to wait a long time to meet someone with a martial emperor level martial art next time. He didn't expect that the person would take the initiative to come to him. Good. He laughed and went up to meet the opponent's long sword. In the blink of an eye, the two of them were fighting extremely quickly. Their figures intertwined, and their strength overflowed in all directions. Because the two of them were fighting so fast, the onlookers couldn't even see it clearly. They could only see two figures coming and going. Chen Guang felt that he might be at a disadvantage. His opponent was armed, but he was still barehanded. It wasn't that he didn't learn weapons and martial arts in the past year, but he didn't think much of them, and he didn't find a suitable weapon. The strength he could display with a weapon might not be as good as his bare hands. Old Man Bao hid in the distance, and he was frightened. He had a feeling that Chen Guang would be suppressed and killed by the martial emperor of the 10 directions in the next moment. The other people hiding in various parts of the true martial Saint Emperor city, who were peeping, had the same thought as Old Man Bao. However, There was nothing to be sad about. This kind of thing was very common in the true martial land. Everyone was used to seeing life and death. Although it was a pity, after all, it was just a change of city lord. Unexpectedly, in less than a few breaths, Chen Guang and the martial emperor of the 10 Directions suddenly separated. Separated by more than 10 meters, the two of them looked at each other, but no one made a move. The winner had been decided? Who had won? The Holy Emperor's clothes were not torn. Could it be that the Holy Emperor had won? As soon as Old Man Bao thought of this, he immediately put this absurd idea out of his mind. How could it be so fast? Even if the Holy Emperor had won, it would have been a Pyrrhic victory. His opponent was the martial emperor of the 10 Directions. While he was thinking about this, Chen Guang snapped his fingers in the distance, and the body of the martial emperor of the 10 Directions cracked. A booklet flew straight out of the martial emperor's chest, and Chen Guang happened to catch it. Chen Guang put the booklet in his sleeve. Old Man Bao, stop reading. Go back and drink. Bao Bo was stunned. This? What this? I said 17 pieces, so it's 17 pieces. If you're still angry, stay here and burn his body. Bao Bo was confused for a moment, and then he fell into ecstasy. The hatred hidden in the depths of his heart gradually surged to his head, and his eyes turned red in an instant. Old Man Bao screamed, and then he turned around and rushed to the body of the martial emperor of the 10 Directions. You beast! Get my daughter back! As for the lackeys who had followed the martial emperor of the 10 Directions to cheer or work as porters, they immediately dispersed. Most of them turned around and ran away, but a small number of them knelt on the ground and shouted in unison, "Greetings, Holy Emperor!" Chen Guang was too lazy to pay attention to these fence-sitters. It was useless to have these kind of lackeys. Without looking back, he waved his hand impatiently and said, "Get out of here." Since Christmas, the news of the tragic death of the martial emperor of the 10 Directions in the true martial Holy Emperor city had spread like wildfire in this area. There were all kinds of rumors and versions. I was also at the scene of the battle that day. I followed Lord 10 Directions to the Holy Emperor city to show the true martial Holy Emperor our strength. I didn't expect that this guy was a peerless genius that only appears once in 10,000 years. Not only did he become a martial artist in a year, but he also easily slapped Lord 10 Directions into several pieces. It's terrifying. The true martial Holy Emperor just slapped the martial emperor of the 10 Directions into powder. The Holy Emperor frowned and stared. At the same time, the sky changed color, the moon moved, sand and stones flew, and the martial emperor of the 10 Directions exploded and died on the spot. Terrifying? How terrifying. All kinds of rumors were spread to the 10 Directions area. For a moment, the other 8 city lords and the martial disciples who stayed in the 10 Directions city were all frightened. Some people who were on good terms with the martial emperor of the 10 Directions fled overnight. There were also some martial disciples who thought they were quick-witted and killed the martial emperor of the 10 Directions family members to join him. Chen Guang didn't accept any of these fence-sitters who cheated on his former master's family members. He even chopped the box full of women and children's heads into 8 pieces. However, he didn't reject other martial disciples who were sensible. If you want to join my sect, we could talk about it. Hand over your martial arts. Hand over all the martial arts in the city you control, and I will spare your life. If you don't commit any more crimes from now on, I can guarantee your safety. In addition, Chen Guang also rejected the temptation of the 2 beautiful female city lords in the other 8 cities. I'm sorry, I don't like women. Oh yes, I don't like men either. After I had an epiphany, I wholeheartedly practiced martial arts. I won't stop until I become a martial emperor. At the same time, Chen Guang's actions also caused his reputation to swiftly spread throughout the 10 cities. What a righteous, benevolent, and wise holy emperor. More importantly, he was so strong that it made people's hair stand on end. Although the people of the true martial arts' great land loved to fight, in the face of an absolute powerhouse that they couldn't defeat, there was only worship left in their minds. His good name spread far and wide, and it saved Chen Guang a lot of trouble. He didn't need to move. He just sat in his true martial holy emperor city and waited for people to send all kinds of martial arts to him. In the blink of an eye, another 3 years passed. In these 3 years, Chen Guang obtained 6 perfect martial emperor-level martial arts. They were all sent to him by the nearby city lords. However, these people didn't have the ability to understand them. These were high-end martial arts that were scattered outside. There were more than 100 other kinds of low-level martial arts. Chen Guang also learned all of them. However, his mind was too complicated and the speed of his internal strength advancement didn't reach his expectations. Every day, besides eating and sleeping, he spent almost all his time on understanding martial arts. In particular, the 6 martial emperor-level martial arts consumed a lot of his energy. As a result, he couldn't advance from a martial artist to a chivalrous person in 3 years. If everything went smoothly like this, it would take about 2 or 3 years for him to become a chivalrous person and advance to the peak of muscle strength. However, on this day, 3 uninvited guests suddenly appeared in the city. Chapter 908. I've long heard of Saint Emperor Zhenwu's fame. Now that I've seen you today, you really live up to your reputation. I've heard so much about you. An old woman in black with a cane stood in the hall of the city lord's mansion. She cupped her hands at Chen Guang with a hoarse voice. A thin middle-aged man with sharp eyebrows and bright eyes stood next to her. He cupped his sword and said to Chen Guang, "I'm Feng Bumian, commander of the Imperial Wind Army. Nice to meet you, Saint Emperor Zhenwu." The other person, who looked young and had glowing skin, but had a head full of white hair, simply cupped his hands as a greeting. Sitting on the city lord's seat, Chen Guang looked at the 3 of them with interest. At the same time, he was pondering if he should get them to stay. He had originally planned to be a bandit in the land of Zhenwu, but he had unknowingly become a famous moral model. How embarrassing. These 3 people were all martial artists and were of the same level as him. As the saying goes, one does not visit a temple for no reason. There was no need for them to come to his territory. They should know that there were no truly good people in this world. A good person would become a good man 20 years later. Everyone, if you have something to say, just say it. Since you are also martial artists, you must know that time is precious. Let's not beat around the bush. Chen Guang didn't want to waste time with these people, so he got straight to the point. The old woman with the cane raised her eyebrows. Saint Emperor Zhenwu is a straightforward person. Snorting through his nose, Chen Guang replied, "Naturally, I've always pursued efficiency." Feng Bumian looked around, and he looked like he wanted to say something but was hesitant. Chen Guang understood. He turned to Old Bao and said, "Old Bao, tell the others to leave." Compared to the first year of the Saint Emperor's first year, although only 3 years had passed, Old Bao had aged a lot. It was as if he had killed 10 martial emperors, but the knot in his heart hadn't brought him back to his youth. Instead, because he had no more worries, he had aged a lot. Old Man Bao signaled the leader of the guards in the hall with his eyes, and the group of guards and civil officials all retreated. Seeing that Old Bao was about to leave, Chen Guang called out to him again, "Old Bao, don't run around. Find a place to sit. Look at how you're staggering. I told you not to come here." Although Chen Guang's mind was sealed in the world in a cup, and he couldn't be easily affected by other people, he still couldn't help but feel sad when he saw Old Bao getting cut by time. The land of true martial wasn't like the sea of moments where one could retain their previous life's memories after reaching a certain level of strength. Once Old Man Bao died, no one knew where his soul would end up in the first layer. It would be extremely difficult to find him again. Although Feng Bumian still had some objections, seeing Chen Guang's insistence, he said helplessly, "Rumor has it that the Zhenwu Saint Emperor is obsessed with martial arts and is obsessed with collecting all the martial arts in the world. Is that true?" Chen Guang nodded and said without hesitation, "Of course, I am also interested in the martial arts that you 3 practice. Looking at your aura, even if it isn't a martial monarch level technique, it should be at least a martial king level technique, right?" The 3's expressions changed slightly. Feng Bumian said awkwardly, "You sure know how to joke. All right, let's make it short." Guang waved his hand once more. He was trying his best to appear arrogant. If he managed to infuriate the three of them, they might make a move against him. At that time, he would be able to rob them. The old woman with the cane stepped forward and said, "It's like this. A few days ago, we found a valley in the Fengya city, which is the city under the control of Commander Yufeng. What's so special about a valley?" Guang was already complaining in his heart. It had appeared, a familiar plot. I was invited to form a party to clear a dungeon, an adventure to find treasures. I regret it so much. If I had known this would happen, I would have read more novels with more bizarre plots and depth. I shouldn't have been so obsessed with the fantasy novels. This is so embarrassing. Feng Bumian smiled. You can't say that. That valley used to be a dry river. It was not formed by the mountains, but by the flow of the river. However, for some reason, the river changed its course, and the water stopped working. That place has been abandoned ever since. Guang's interest was instantly piqued. The importance of a river in the land of Jinwu was self-evident. It was even more valuable than the oil and minerals on Earth. In his 10 cities area, not to mention a river, there was not even a small ditch. The wells were dug hundreds of meters underground, and only then could they barely pour out enough water for daily use. He unconsciously leaned forward a little. "Oh, that's interesting." Feng Bumian saw that his interest was piqued, and he was secretly delighted. His expression did not change. "That's right. More importantly, I found a cave left behind by a sage in that valley. I believe it was a place where a martial lord lived." The old woman with the cane said, "That's right. The three of us went in to investigate, but we were stopped outside by the seal left by this senior." The elder with the child's face finally spoke. "Therefore, we wish to invite the true martial saint emperor to go with us. With the four of us, we should be able to break through the seal." Feng Bumian continued, "The true martial saint emperor may be young, but to be able to cultivate to this level within a year, you could be considered the most powerful person in this area. The martial lord senior may be powerful, but he has been around for a long time. The energy he left behind has mostly dissipated. With your help, breaking through the cave is almost certain." Guang wanted to fall to the ground. He was tricked. He was completely tricked. "I won't go. I can't go. I can't embarrass myself like this." But he still went. The reason was simple. Before coming here, the three of them had prepared many benefits for him. Aside from the martial arts that the three of them possessed, they had also started preparing for it half a year ago. They had prepared over 1,000 martial arts manuals that they could find in their respective cities and placed them before Guang. Though Guang could choose to kill the three of them and rob them of their secret manuals, he thought that there should be some perfect martial arts of the martial monarch level in the cave of the martial saint emperor. There were more than 400,000 martial arts of the martial monarch level in the land of Jinwu. Except for the special ones like Tong Yan's young boy magical method, the other martial arts manuals were not treasured by many people. However, the world was too big, and it was not easy to find them. In the last 3 years, millions of people in the 10 cities had searched all over the mountains. Some merchants who liked to cater to Guang went to places farther away to buy the martial arts manuals that Guang needed at high price. But the results were minimal. Most of the martial arts manuals they could find were of low quality. As such, he packed up his belongings and told the people in Jinwu Saint Emperor City to keep a low profile. He was going on a long journey. Speaking of which, it was strange. Ever since Guang entered the true martial Saint Emperor City and killed the 10 martial monarchs to become the overlord of the 10 cities, the weather in this region had been good for the next few years. Rain, which was rare to see in a few years, actually happened once a month. Some people said it was because the Saint Emperor was wise and lucky. Some people said it was the rumored auspicious sign. Wherever the auspicious sign was, the auspicious sign would be there. All in all, the weather in the 10 cities was favorable, and all the households had enough food to eat, and their bodies would be better. Even more martial arts disciples were born. The commerce in the 10 cities gradually developed, and the merchants naturally had work to do. Even Old Man Bao's nephew started to work as a merchant under Guang's encouragement. Old Man Bao did not allow it first, but Guang told him, If you don't help your own family, who will you help? You are my housekeeper, but I have nothing to give you. Don't think that you have this status now. When you die, what will you leave behind? You might as well help your family. Maybe in the future, when your nephew's business gets big, he can find you after you are reborn. Old Man Bao's nephew did not disappoint. He was known as a red-headed merchant with the special permission of the Saint Emperor, and he did well. Chen Guang had obtained 6 martial emperor-level techniques, and one of them was bought at a high price in a big city thousands of miles away. Chen Guang and the other 3 sat on the tall Fergana horses and galloped all the way. These horses were also special. They were at least twice as strong as the common horses on Earth. Their speed was astonishing, and they could easily travel thousands of miles in a day. Not only would people be nourished by the yin and yang qi, but animals would also benefit. Mr. Chen, the old man has something to say, but I don't know if I should say it. As the horses galloped, the white-haired old man suddenly said. After a day, everyone became more familiar with each other. Chen Guang was always called Saint Emperor by the Saint Emperor, which made him feel uncomfortable. However, he could not make them call him sir like his subordinates in the Saint Emperor city, so he just let them call him Mr. Chen. Please speak. The old man knows that Mr. Chen is obsessed with martial arts, but a martial emperor-level expert once said that it is better to have less than more, and that it is better to be good at it. Although you have great ambitions, you should still act according to your capabilities. Chen Guang did not refute him. Thank you for the reminder, senior. I will remember it. Seeing that he was feigning civility, the white-haired old man smiled and did not say anything else. Feng Bumian, on the other hand, laughed. Since Mr. Chen can easily kill 10 martial emperors, you must be stronger than the 3 of us. Of course, you have your own opinion. That's true. I spoke too much. The old man nodded and did not say anything else. 3 days later, the 4 arrived at their destination. This was indeed a good place with green grass. Although the river had dried up for who knew how many years, the soil in this valley was much more fertile than in other places. The vegetation was flourishing, and the sounds of birds and beasts could be faintly heard from the valley from time to time. There were many soldiers patrolling the valley entrance. They were Feng Bumian's men. Chen Guang teased, "Brother Feng, you are very careful." Feng Bumian smiled. This place used to be a place where the martial artists who ruled over this area often went into seclusion. After I became the leader of this area, I often came here to meditate. However, a few days ago, I only planned to build a stone house for myself. I didn't expect to find such a good place underground. Of course, I have to keep a close eye on it. The valley was very deep, and the road was rugged. It was difficult for the horses to travel. The 4 of them got off their horses and ran on foot. Their speed was not much slower than a 1,000-mile horse. After running for half a day, the 4 of them finally reached the deepest part of the valley. Chen Guang raised his head and looked around. He noticed that this was a lake in the shape of a bull's horn. The senior martial lord sure knew how to pick a good place. Everyone, the entrance to the cave is here. A human-made pit that was tens of meters deep appeared in front of the 4 of them. Looking down, they could vaguely see a stone door at the bottom of the pit. There were at least 100 corpses scattered around the pit. The blood was fresh, and it seemed that they had died not long ago. Seeing that Chen Guang was looking at the corpses, Feng Bumian said casually, "These are the people we sent to die when we tried to break the seal. Sorry for the embarrassment." Chapter 909. Ridicule? Chen Guang was momentarily dazed. Was this as simple as ridicule? You sent more than 100 people to their deaths, and in your eyes, it was ridicule? Chen Guang turned around to study the pile of bodies that were tossed out like garbage. Seeing that he was still bothered by this, Feng Bumian laughed. I did not expect Brother Chan to have such a kind heart. Chen Guang pointed at one of the bodies and said, "Brother Feng, this young man's face," he did not finish his sentence, but the young man's appearance was 50 to 60% similar to Feng Bumian's. Feng Bumian waved his hand nonchalantly. "This is my 37th son. He has been training in the labor camp. I did not expect him to become anything special, but it is a pity that he died here. Chen Guang was shocked. When Feng Bumian said this, his tone was extremely calm, and it did not seem like he was faking it. He really did not care. The one who died was his son, but in his eyes, it was as if Chen Guang had seen a dead grasshopper on the street. Yes, that's right. It couldn't even compare to sparrows or other small animals. It couldn't even cause any waves. Was this the normal state of the people in this world? Chen Guang thought about it carefully, and it did seem to be the case. For years ago, when he was in Zhenwu St. Emperor's City, other than Old Bao, no one else seemed to care about their family. The reason why Old Bao was different was probably because he had lost 17 daughters in one day. The people of Zhenwu land were the same as the people of the Sea of Time. Their souls were probably incomplete, and they lacked something compared to the people of Earth. All right, since we are here, should we go down now, or should we discuss this further? Chen Guang gathered his thoughts and waved his hand. The old woman walked to the very front and jumped into the deep hole. That's right. For this matter, we've already spent more or less half a year. It's time to settle things and see what this senior martial lord has left for us. Although she had hunched back, her movements when she jumped down were very nimble. Feng Bumian and the elder followed closely behind. Chen Guang followed closely behind. The four of them walked to the front of the stone door. Chen Guang didn't say anything and waited for the other three to make their move. Feng Bumian turned back to look at Chen Guang. Brother Chen, later, the four of us will attack the stone door together. Don't worry, just give it your all. The old woman with the walking stick also said, previously, the three of us worked together and expended a lot of effort to blast open the stone door. Now that Brother Chen is with us, it should be much easier. There is something strange about this stone door. With the strength of us martial artists, we are unable to break it. We can only break it open for a short period of time, and then it will quickly close. Then how do we get out? Chen Guang was concerned about this problem. He did not want to be trapped inside. There is a mechanism inside that can be opened from the inside to the outside. Coming out should be easy. The child-faced old man explained. Chen Guang nodded. All right. Seeing that Chen Guang had no other opinions, Feng Bumian turned back to look at the stone door. His expression gradually turned serious. Then, shall we start now? Everyone, remember not to hold back. We must give it our all. If we can't blast it open, we will suffer the backlash. Chen Guang agreed quickly, but in his heart, he did not agree. I really don't dare to use my full strength. I don't want to scare you guys. However, his advantage was his physical body. In terms of internal energy, even though he was only 2 to 3 years away from becoming a martial artist, he might not be as good as the other three who had been in the martial world for many years. Actually, these people were quite pitiful. They've been stuck in the martial world for so many years and still could not improve. Everyone in the true martial land wanted to become stronger. However, every martial artist with potential wanted to become stronger. Who wouldn't want to become stronger? Who wouldn't want to climb higher and higher in order to experience the denser yin-yang qi in the higher realms? For example, if a martial artist forced himself to the limit of his body's endurance, even if he was just a slave in the 5th layer of the martial lord's territory, as long as he did not die, the speed of his cultivation would be much faster than staying in the 1st layer. Unfortunately, everyone's talent and bone structure were different. Naturally, the upper limit was also different. The cruel pyramid was not only reflected in the density of yin-yang qi. In the case of every native of Zhenwu, the inherent difference in talent and bone structure determined everyone's upper limit. For people like Chen Guang, after he obtained internal energy, he could ride on the clouds and rise to the top. However, people like Feng Bumian and the 10 Directions martial emperors could only be stuck in the martial world, unable to improve. Martial artists who were willing to stay in the 1st level to become city masters or feudal lords and act as experts among the dwarves might have either lost their sharpness in their bones, or they had gone to a higher level and been oppressed by others to the point of living in a constant state of panic, only to return in a pitiful state. The truly talented martial artists had already left this place to go to a higher layer. Feng Bumian and the rest had their eyes on this martial lord's abode. They were probably hoping to find some kind of treasure that could improve their bone structure so that they could break through the martial world and become a martial artist in their lifetime. 3, 2, 1. After a short period of gathering energy, the four of them did not take out their weapons. Instead, they pushed their palms forward. For waves of energy rushed out of their palms and hit the stone door. Of the 4 waves of energy, the old man's was the thickest, followed by Feng Bumian's, the old woman's, and Chun Guang's looked the weakest. A loud sound came from the stone door. It was like a morning bell or evening drum. Then it rumbled, and a small gap appeared. The door is open. Everyone quick! Feng Bumian was the first to rush in. His movement was very fast. Chun Guang, who was the last, had just entered when the stone door slammed shut with a bang. The loud vibration caused the 4 to stumble. As far as the eye could see, this place was not some magnificent paradise. As far as the eye could see, it was just a deep stone room. The stone walls of the cave were inlaid with luminous stones that were either natural or man-made, illuminating the stone room in a hazy manner. There seemed to be the sound of water coming from afar, and there was a light breeze blowing on their faces. This meant that this seemingly enclosed abode had a way to communicate with the outside world. This abode should have been built under the sand continent. I wonder what kind of scary enemy the senior has offended. Even in our first layer, he has to be so careful. Feng Bumian explained as he walked deeper into the cave. The 4 groped their way forward for about 50 meters before Feng Bumian stopped. He pointed at the rippling surface of the water and said, "The thing that stopped the 3 of us here is this small underground lake." Chun Guang pretended to be naive. "Can't we just swim over there?" "No, that's what I did in the beginning, but I almost lost my life. There are traps hidden under this small lake. If we go into the water, they will come at us from the water. They are silent, but powerful. That senior martial lord might not be the most powerful, but his skill in the art of traps is quite scary. If we fly through the air, there will be sharp blades and other traps." The 3 of us didn't know the depth of the lake, and we suffered a great loss here. Feng Bumian said with lingering fear. Chun Guang was confused. "Then, it doesn't seem like I'll be of much help, does it?" "No. Since that senior martial lord left this lake behind, he has to go through it himself, right? Therefore, he left behind some traps, and he seems to have prepared some tests for those who come after us. It's over there. Once the mechanism is activated, a Tin Woodman will jump out. It's invulnerable to weapons, water, and fire. With our strength, we can only barely defend ourselves against the Tin Woodman's attacks. However, we won't be able to destroy it. This time, with Brother Chin around, we'll have a chance of winning. In my opinion, if we can destroy this Tin Man, we might be able to find a way." Chun Guang nodded. "I see." The 4 did not waste any more time. Feng Bumian stepped forward to activate the trap, and then he retreated like lightning. He yelled, "Everyone be careful. It's coming out." Before he finished speaking, a tall black shadow appeared behind him. Feng Bumian heard the cold wind behind him and quickly leaped forward. The next moment, a loud boom came from where he was standing. A muscular figure about 10 feet tall stood where he was. His right foot stepped on the ground, and thick smoke billowed out from where his right foot touched the ground. "Let's go." The white-haired, child-faced old man took out the iron whip from his waist and took the lead to pounce forward. The old woman with the cane also waved the iron staff in her hand and leaped forward. Feng Bumian pulled out his sword with a clang. Using the starry steps, he walked in circles on the ground to approach the Tin Man. Chun Guang originally planned to observe for a while longer before deciding what to do next, but the 3 were already in front of him. He did not want to take advantage of the situation, so he also took out his handy weapon from his back and ran forward. As he ran, he shook off the white cloth that was wrapped around his handy weapon, revealing the true appearance of the weapon. This caused Feng Bumian and the other 2 to almost trip. He really could not think of a suitable weapon for himself. Even though he had learned many martial arts, and there were weapons among them, he felt that they did not match his aura. Therefore, he came up with a random idea. First, this thing had to be heavy and heavy enough, or else he would not be able to fully utilize the advantage of his perfect physical body. Secondly, it had to not be easily damaged. This world was full of experts, and even though the art of forging was quite advanced, unless he found a legendary blacksmith, it would be difficult to forge a weapon that could accompany him all the way to Martial Monarch. Lastly, it had to be powerful, and when it hit someone, it had to be powerful. Therefore, I chose the mace. There is no need to explain how useful it was. It was simple and brutal, and it had full damage. Brother Chun, I really did not expect someone as handsome and elegant as you to be using such a powerful weapon. Feng Bumian could not help but tease as he hacked at the Tin Man's body. With a chuckle, Chun Guang dodged the tin humanoid slap and smashed his club against the latter's wrist. It can't be considered heroic, but it's fine as long as it's useful. The old woman with the cane also teased. When I saw you carrying it on your back, I thought it was a broadsword or a mace. You gave me quite a fright. Brother Chin's weapon has a small handle and a large head, and it has sharp spikes on it. When you swing it, it's very powerful. The white-haired elder said as he lashed the mace on the Tin Man's body, causing sparks to fly. At the moment, even though the Tin Man was running around, due to its lack of agility, all his attacks missed. However, even though the attacks from the four looked scary, they were not effective. Even the spikes on Chun Guang's mace had been broken, but the Tin Man still looked very lively. Brother Feng, it seems like one more person won't make any difference. Chun Guang could not help but say. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.